quorum. Also, for the record, I have checked the return of service on the service of the warrant, and I'm saying for the record that service was properly made. The fire exits are located on both sides of this room and also in the rear out the hallway. And I've also been asked to request that if you have to leave the meeting early, kindly drop off your electronic voting devices with the checkers in the front hall. And we do have a quorum, and I understand that there are some acknowledgments that our state representative and the Board of Selectmen wish to make at this time.
Good evening, everyone. So I have a few certificates of recognition. In recognition of your years of service to the town of Chelmsford as a town meeting representative, the community is grateful for your dedication and thoughtful deliberation of issues that have come before the town meeting during your 10 years in this position. The example set by you and your fellow long-standing town meeting members serves as an inspiration to all who strive to match your determination to honor the civic obligations. The Chelmsford Board of Selectmen do hereby acknowledge the personal sacrifice and extraordinary commitment required to achieve this significant milestone, and recognizes that this distinction has been earned by maintaining the respect and support of all Chelmsford residents. Congratulations on your many years of faithful and consistent service to the town of Chelmsford. These certificates of recognition are for Susan Dandraw, Linda Lee, Elizabeth Twombly. Just those three, yep. So congratulations, I have your certificates. Come on up. All right, and we're going to now have Tammy Guave come up and read hers.
Oh, I don't have a 30. I have a 10.
No, 30s. Yeah. Of course.
Unclear on that.
You do before age.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tammy Govea, State Representative for the 14th Middlesex District, for those of you who don't know, and I represent precincts 1 and 9 in Chelmsford, in addition to half of Acton, all of Concord, and all of Carlisle. And I'm particularly proud and excited to be here tonight to present the award or recognition to Kathy Bruff for 30 years of service. I met Kathy last year, and I know she's been a real leader with Budget Buddy, so I had a chance to celebrate those milestones with her, and really happy to be here to celebrate this milestone as well. So, Kathy, if you can come up, and I'll read a resolution from the Massachusetts House of Representatives. Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Kathy Bruff in recognition of your leadership, professionalism, and dedication throughout 30 years of service as town meeting representative to the town of Chelmsford. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. Given this 21st day of October 2019, signed by Speaker of the House Robert DeLeo and myself, State Representative Tammy Govea. Thank you, Tammy. You're welcome.
Hold on. Yep. And then, this isn't the state, but on behalf of the town of Chelmsford, In recognition and appreciation of your 30 years of service to the town of Chelmsford as a town meeting representative, the community is grateful for your dedication and thoughtful deliberation of issues that have come before town meeting during your many years in this position. The example set by you and your fellow longstanding town meeting members serves as an inspiration for all who strive to match your determination to honor this civic obligation. So therefore, the Board of Selectmen do hereby acknowledge the personal sacrifices and extraordinary commitment required to achieve this significant milestone, in recognition that this distinction has been earned by maintaining the respect and support of all Chelmsford residents. Congratulations for your many years of faithful service and consistent service to the town of Chelmsford. Thank you. You're welcome. And we're going to have Tom Golden come up and present.
Good evening, everyone. I have 7 citations to do. I apologize.
Use your auctioneer.
Oh, no, I'm not using the auctioneer tone. People want to get out of the Patriots game. George Merrill. George Merrill, where are you, George? Come on up, George. 30 years. All right, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for George Merrill. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the House of Representatives be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers sincerest congratulations to George L. Merrill in recognition of your leadership, professionalism, and dedication throughout 30 years of service to the town of Chelmsford as a meeting representative. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors given on this 21st day of October 2019 at the State House, Boston, Massachusetts, by the Honorable Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo, and offered by myself, Thomas A. Golden, Jr. Congratulations.
George, we have one for you, too. Yep. So in recognition of your appreciation of 30 years of service to the town of Chelmsford as a town meeting representative, the community is grateful for your dedication and thoughtful deliberation of the issues that have come before you as a town meeting rep during the years in this position. Your example, again, has been for your, by you and your fellow longstanding town meeting members, serves as an inspiration for all of us to at least try to match your determination to honor this civic obligation. The Board of Selectmen do hereby acknowledge your personal sacrifices and extraordinary commitment required to achieve this milestone and recognizes that this distinction has been earned by maintaining the respect and the support of all Chelmsford citizens. Congratulations on your many years of faithful and consistent service to the town of Chelmsford. Thank you. Mine are the same.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mary Franz. Mary? The Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the House of Representatives, be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations and thanks to Mary E. France in recognition of your leadership, professionalism, and dedication throughout 30 years of service as a town meeting representative to the town of Chelmsford. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors given on this 21st day of October 2019 by the Honorable Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo, and offered by myself, Thomas A. Golden, Jr. Thank you very much, Mary, for all that you do.
Yep. Mary, in recognition and appreciation of your 30 years of service to the town of Chelmsford as a town meeting rep, the community is grateful for your dedication and thoughtful deliberation of issues that have come before you as a town meeting rep. The example set by you and your fellow long-standing town meeting rep members serves as an inspiration for us all. Therefore, the Board of Selectmen do hereby acknowledge this personal sacrifice and extraordinary commitment required to achieve this significant milestone and recognizes that this distinction has been earned by maintaining the respect and support of all Chelmsford residents. Congratulations on your many years of faithful and consistent service to the town of Chelmsford. Thank you.
Janet Dubner. Janet Dubner, 30 years. Come on up, please. Only a few more, folks, but 30 years is a pretty big deal. Put your hands together one more time for Janet. 30 years ago, I was 2. Maybe not. The House of Representatives, be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Janet G. Dubner in recognition of your leadership, professionalism, dedication through 30 years of service as a town meeting representative to the town of Chelmsford. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and another 30 years of service. Given this 21st day at the State House, October 20th, 2019, by the Honorable Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo, and authored by myself, Thomas A. Golden, Jr. Congratulations again.
Hold on, Janet. From the town of Chelmsford, in recognition and support for your 30 years of service to the town of Chelmsford as a town meeting representative, the community is grateful for your dedication and thoughtful deliberation of issues that have come before town meeting during your years in this position. The example set by you and your fellow long-standing town meeting members serves as an inspiration for us all to strive and match your determination to honor this civic obligation. The Chelmsford Board of Selectmen do hereby acknowledge this personal sacrifice and extraordinary commitment required to achieve this significant milestone and recognize that this distinction has been earned by maintaining the respect and support of all Chelmsford residents. Congratulations on your many years of faithful and consistent service to the town of Chelmsford.
All right, I'm back. Just letting you guys know. All right, Daniel J. Sullivan III. Put your hands down, put together for Daniel J. Sullivan. Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the House of Representatives, be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Daniel J. Sullivan III in recognition of your leadership, professionalism, and dedication throughout 30 years of service as a town meeting representative. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors, given on the 21st day of October 2019 by the Honorable Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo, and offered by David M. Nangle, State Representative. Thank you, Council.
And Daniel, in recognition and appreciation of your 30 years of service to the town of Chelmsford as a town meeting representative, the community is grateful for your dedication and thoughtful deliberation of issues that have come before you when you were a town meeting rep during these many years in this position. The example set by you and your fellow long-standing town meeting members serves as an inspiration to all who strive to match your determination to honor this civic obligation. Therefore, the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen do hereby acknowledge the personal sacrifices and extraordinary commitment required to achieve this significant milestone and recognize that this distinction has been earned by maintaining the respect and support of the Chelmsford residents. Congratulations on your many years of faithful and consistent service to the town of Chelmsford.
Michael Curran for 30 years. Please come on up. Michael F. Curran. Not here? What's that? Oh. Well, let's not clap for Michael. He's in Florida right now, so. Michael, we're only kidding. We're only kidding. He's probably watching right now. All right. Who's going to be last here? We got two more. All right. Evelyn Thorne. Evelyn Thorne. Come on down. You're the next contestant. Absolutely impossible for 30 years. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the House of Representatives, be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Evelyn S. Thorne, town meeting representative, in recognition of your leadership, professionalism, dedication throughout 30 years of service as a town meeting representative to the town of Chelmsford. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors, given this 21st day of October 2019 by the Honorable Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo, and offered by James Arcero. Congratulations.
Evelyn, in recognition and appreciation of your 30 years of service to the town of Chelmsford as a town meeting representative, the community is grateful for your dedication and thoughtful deliberation of issues that have come before you as a town meeting representative during your years in this position. The example set by you and your fellow long-standing town meeting members serves as an inspiration to all who strive to match your determination to honor this civic obligation. Therefore, the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen do hereby acknowledge the personal sacrifices and extraordinary commitment required to achieve this significant milestone, and recognize that this distinction has been earned by maintaining the respect and support of all Chelmsford residents. Congratulations on your many years of faithful service to the town of Chelmsford. Congratulations.
Before I get to the last piece, I just want to, I have a 15-minute speech.
You're out of order.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a real pleasure to be here tonight to offer congratulatory remarks to the folks for 30 years. But last, most certainly not least, put your hands together for Al Thomas. Al, come on up. Let's all recite this together. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The House of Representatives, be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to W. Allen Thomas, Jr., Town Meeting Representative, in recognition of your leadership, your professionalism, dedication throughout 30 years of service as Town Meeting Representatives to the town of Chelmsford. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. Given on this 21st day of October 2019 at the State House, Boston, Massachusetts, by the Honorable Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo, and offered by James Arciero. Congratulations.
Al, in recognition and appreciation of your 30 years of service to the town of Chelmsford, as a town meeting representative, the community is grateful for your dedication and thoughtful deliberation of issues that have come before you as town meeting representative. The example set by you and your fellow long-standing town meeting members serves as an inspiration to all who strive to match your determination to honor this civic obligation. The Chelmsford Board of Selectmen do hereby acknowledge this personal sacrifice and extraordinary commitment required to achieve this significant milestone, and recognize that this distinction has been earned by maintaining the respect and support of your fellow Chelmsford residents. Congratulations on your many years of faithful and consistent service to the town of Chelmsford. Thank you.
Congratulations to all of the recipients today. I would like to welcome all town meeting reps to tonight's meeting. As has been our practice, we have two screens so that all representatives may read the articles and any amendments upon which they will be voting. You can also view the slides on the screen on your iPads, laptops, computers, or other smart devices. Simply log on using the instructions that may or may not be on the screen, and apparently are not. Speaking of amendments, all amendments will be submitted on the forms which you can get from either the town clerk or me. If you know prior to town meeting that you intend to file an amendment, you can see me or Patricia Zuris prior to the meeting for the form, or you can email them to me, and I will make the necessary copies and distribute them to town council and the typists so that these will be ready before town meeting begins. And if you get it to either of us prior to the introduction of the article, town council should have the opportunity to review the amendment, which will expedite the meeting. This form will create an original and 3 copies. The white top copy goes to me, the yellow copy to the amendment assistant, the pink copy to the town clerk, and the orange copy to the maker of the amendment. I would like to thank Chelmsford Telemedia for their assistance in setting up the screens, streaming, timer, and broadcasting this meeting. Here are the rules with respect to town meeting protocol and procedure. All questions and debate shall emanate from the microphone facing the moderator in the center hall and shall go through the moderator. Boards or committee members, other town officials, or department heads may use other microphones to answer questions or provide information to the meeting. Speakers shall refrain from asking rhetorical or argumentative questions and shall only ask questions seeking needed information. The questions should be in the who, what, when, where, and why mode. Kindly avoid argumentative questions that start or end with, isn't it true? Or, wouldn't you admit? I would prefer not to have to rule questions out of order, but I am bound by the laws and regulations that define our conduct, and I will do my best to enforce them fairly and respectfully. I will allow a reasonable amount of follow-up questions, but I will have to intervene if any individual is asking an excessive number of follow-up questions. All presenters of articles shall be limited to 10 minutes, although for budget presentations, the presenter will be allowed 20 minutes, and I shall notify each when they have 1 minute remaining. With respect to discussion, speakers are encouraged to be brief, and each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes of debate. You should be able to make your points within 5 minutes. If you truly believe that is not enough time for you to make your arguments, kindly advise me in advance, and I may allow some leeway. Speakers should ask their questions prior to engaging in discussion. Making inquiries will not be considered as part of the 5-minute discussion limit unless you have started discussion and then ask questions. Once the clock starts, it will not stop until the speaker does or time expires. I would appreciate being advised that a speaker is beginning discussion. We do have some other rules of protocol. Please do not refer to any prior speaker by name. The proper designation is to call him or her the previous speaker. Please refrain from personal attacks. Challenging or arguing in opposition to another's position is fair game and is what this meeting is all about. Intentional slander against any individual or group cannot be tolerated. Let us refrain from repeating arguments that have already been made, but new ideas or distinctions are welcome and encouraged, especially with the articles that we have in this session. I would prefer people not repeat their arguments or repeat other people's arguments, because I don't want us to be here for Halloween, and I really don't want us to be here for Thanksgiving. Okay, discussion of pending litigation will not be permitted unless specifically included in the warrant article being debated. If during the course of discussion I observe several speakers on one side of an issue but none in opposition, I will interrupt debate to inquire if there are any who wish to express the opposing position or offer an amendment. If there are none, I shall end debate and move the question. If there is opposition, I will move that party to the front of the line and allow debate to continue. I trust that you will all appreciate how this will advance our mutual goal of moving town meeting along. To those who may be next in line, should I ever have to exercise this process, you have my apologies in advance. There will not be any debating from the presenter's podium. They may answer questions, but should they want to engage in debate, presenters would have to queue up in the line like everyone else. A person should not speak a second time until everyone has had an opportunity to speak, unless the previous speaker wishes to correct or dispute a statement of fact made by another speaker. This privilege will be narrowly construed by the moderator. Transparency and effective governance are the two goals of town meeting. To expedite our meeting without affecting transparency, we have successfully employed a process called consent agenda. A consent agenda allows the representatives to bundle several routine warrant articles into one, so that instead of taking several separate votes on these essential bookkeeping articles, we will take one vote on all of them. The town manager and I have discussed the type of articles that would be conducive to this process. These are articles that generally do not involve any questions or debate and are passed in the normal course of town business. I shall request a motion that the body vote to approve a consent agenda involving the articles to be included in the consent agenda. This still allows for questions and answers and discussion, with the opportunity to add or delete consent agenda articles as town meeting deems best. The articles that I am suggesting for a consent agenda are Articles 2 through 6. Out of regard for the presenters and your fellow town meeting reps, I respectfully request that there be no conversations at your tables. If I can hear background discussions up here, it means that there may be representatives who cannot hear the presentation, questions and answers, or discussion. Thank you. Now, Article 1, which is the reports of town officers and committees. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, town meeting representatives and those watching at home or in the hall. My name is Paul Cohen. I'm town manager here in Chelmsford, and I've had the privilege and honor to serve you as town manager for the past 13 years. And I also have the benefit of serving under a dedicated board of selectmen and working with the tremendous, talented team of dedicated and tireless department heads and employees of this community. Certainly the community is much different than it was when I arrived 13 years ago, but I think I can summarize the situation today as we're in a very good place as a community, and we're not perfect. There's still work to be done. There's still efforts to achieve, but we have work in front of us this evening, and I'll sort of lay out to you sort of an overview of the warrant that's before you, and then introduce John Souza, our finance director, who will provide the 5-year financial forecast in conformance with the town's bylaws. And also, Community Development Director Evan Belansky will provide you with some information regarding the Chelmsford Center redevelopment that is pending before our community and heading for the planning board as soon as within the next few weeks. But one thing I want to report about, because it is something that I've heard concerns about over the last 13 years, and it was certainly before I arrived, and that has to do with the education funding formula of the Commonwealth, which affects the town of Chelmsford. Upon my arrival, and even prior to that, we had many dedicated individuals, some who are sitting next to me, Kathy Duffett and many others, and not to single Kathy out individually, but many others who trekked to the State House and fought for local aid, Chapter 70 education aid for this community. The current Chapter 70 education funding formula was enacted in 1993, 26 years ago. We are on the cusp of a new education funding formula. 2 weeks ago, the Senate enacted its version of the education funding formula, and in 2 days, the House of Representatives is going to debate its version of the Chapter 70 and overall education funding formula. It is noteworthy and notable and praiseworthy legislation. It addresses significant resources to those in need across the Commonwealth to ensure that all students receive a fair and adequate level of education, regardless of which community in which they live in the Commonwealth. It addresses some issues such as funding for special ed circuit breaker. It increases funding for the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And it achieves a lot of issues in terms of students in poverty, English language learners, and so forth. However, there is a concern for the town of Chelmsford, which I have written to my state representatives and also spoke to our state senator about, and I bring this to your attention this evening. In this proposed legislation, it's a concern about ongoing level of Chapter 70 education funding formula. Many of you have heard over the years the issue about Chapter 70 funding, which is we receive $11.2 million in Chapter 70 funding for our 5,000 students in our school system. And we've expressed concerns over those years that why do we receive $11 million when the town of Westford receives $17 million, and so forth and so on. Under the proposed legislation, the town of Chelmsford, along with over 100 other communities, will receive minimum aid going forward under Chapter 70, which is a polite way of saying that most of the Chapter 70 resources going forward will go to gateway cities and other communities who have students of poverty and English language learners. And we don't begrudge that fact. However, the concern is that the proposed minimum aid level of funding for Chapter 70 education aid from the state would be at $30 per pupil going forward. That amounts to $150,000, 30 times 5,000 students. And the sad part about that is that's less than the rate of inflation. That's about 1.4%. And as we know, inflation is greater than that, and certainly the cost of running the school system in terms of education, the personnel who dedicate themselves and serve our community, as well as the cost for special education services, utilities, and others are greater than that. And so my report to you this evening is to inform you of what's taking place, but also to encourage you on behalf of the town to reach out to the House of Representatives within the next 2 days. The amendments have to be filed by Wednesday. Within 24 hours, and the debate will begin on Wednesday. Then it will go to conference committee, and the expectation and hope is that the governor will sign the legislation by the end of the calendar year. So thank you, Mr. Moderator, for those introductory remarks. Coming back to the meeting attendance this evening, we have 32 articles on the warrant. As the moderator mentioned earlier, we've placed the consent agenda items at the beginning of the warrant, so therefore it's easy to follow, and we'll go through those shortly. On page 2 of the Finance Committee's booklet, which is the pink booklet that you received this evening, you have a summary of the financial articles for your consideration. In summary, we closed fiscal year 19 last June 30th in solid position. We closed the books with $1.76 million in free cash. Sounds like a lot of money. However, when you consider that we have a $134 million operating budget, we closed with 1.3% of our budget coming back, and most of that was in the form of local receipts in terms of permit fees, motor vehicle excise, and so forth. Obviously, we're at levy limit, and revenues continue to come in strong in terms of the collections in the collector's office. And in fact, in 2 weeks, on November 18th, the town's financial auditors will be in the town offices, the Board of Selectmen meeting room, room 204, and will present the fiscal year 2019 financial audit and management letter to the Board of Selectmen. So the question becomes, in the consideration for many of the financial articles at the front of the warrant this evening, is what to do with the town's free cash. Essentially, we have three options. One is to save it, i.e. by putting it in the stabilization fund. Chose not to go that route because right now we have $10.2 million in our stabilization fund, which is about 8.1% of the town's operating budget. The town's stated financial policies are to have between 5 and 10% of our budget in stabilization or savings for ongoing operations, which would basically be about 2 months of operations for the community. So recognizing the fact that due to the returns that we had in our investments, there was really no need to add additional savings at this time. The second option was to reduce the tax levy, and that is always an option which to use the levy for. However, I went and recommend for your consideration this evening option number 3, which is to invest in the town's infrastructure. Many of you are aware we have needs across the community in our capital infrastructure that really outpace what we can do with the town's resources in terms of an annual $3.5 million capital budget that really comes before this body in the spring. Many of you may recall at spring town meeting we allocated, in 2018, we allocated $1 million to fund the reapportion of the high school parking lot. That work was completed in the end of this summer. It's been a tremendous improvement to that facility. However, we split that article to $1 million, and then the remaining $500,000 work still remains to be done. So there's an article at tonight's meeting to appropriate $550,000 to finish that work on the front portion of the parking lot, and when we'll get to that article, you'll see the rationale for doing that. We also have the opportunity to replace a portion of the roof at the South Grove School. That roof is at the end of its useful life. It's only a $400,000 project because it's only a partial roof replacement, and we've submitted a request for you this evening of $400,000 in free cash for that appropriation. The other good news with that appropriation is the town would receive approximately 50% back from the state under the Massachusetts School Building Authority Accelerated Repair Program. And then the other project that's major is a $250,000 appropriation in free cash for the Public Works facility paving in terms of the top coat of that facility. Many of you may recall 9 years ago we opened that facility with a binder coat, and we've continued to piecemeal that project in incremental steps. It's now time to take the step of putting a top coat on the exterior surface of that facility before we lose the binder coat. And then finally, the other significant draw upon free cash is the $385,000 contribution to the Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund. That is a recurring article at Fall Town Meeting in order to meet the obligations of funding our sewer debt that was used to finance the latter portions of the sewer construction across the community. By statute, the interest on that fund from the sewer capacity fee rolls to the general fund. However, the funding formula calls for that interest to be deposited into the fund, and that's what we'll do again this evening. So again, we take our one-time revenues and we use them for one-time expenditures. So as that is intro, I'm now going to turn the microphone over to Finance Director John Souza, who will provide you with a 5-year financial forecast.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good evening. Tonight I'd like to provide you with some highlights from our updated 5-year financial forecast. In this presentation, we'll take a look at revenue trends, expenditure trends, and then look at the overall forecast. Under revenue, looking ahead for fiscal year 21, our largest single source continues to be local property taxes. Under state law, we start with our levy base of $101.6 million, and this is a historical figure based on the prior year's levy limit. Then to that, you add the 2.5% increase allowed, estimated new growth of 1.6 million, and then finally 3.65 million for excluded debt, and that's to cover the debt service for a sewer, school, and DPW facility projects. And this gives us the total levy of 109.39 million that can be raised through property taxes. Going forward to the next slide, we'll look at state aid. As the town manager discussed in his opening remarks, Chapter 70 Aid for Education is the largest component in state aid. We're estimating that we'll receive $150,000 for the next year, and a total of about $11.35 million. The other large account in state aid is general municipal aid, and we're anticipating $150,000 increase for that category as well. It's giving us a total of roughly $5.5 million. We're not anticipating any large increases in state aid. Going forward to available funds, as we know from prior years, this is many reimbursements from various revolving and special purpose funds. A couple of the major accounts that are included here are we usually have a reimbursement from the school child care fund to cover the cost of employee benefits for those folks. Also, the forecast includes a transfer of $2.3 million from the sewer capital construction fund, and that's part of our ongoing long-term financial plan to cover the debt service for the latter phases of the sewer system. And then the last category in revenue is local receipts. Motor vehicle excise taxes continue to account for about 50%. We're forecasting an increase of about $100,000 to $5.5 million. That's based on strength that we've seen in motor vehicle excise taxes over the last 4 fiscal years or so. Total local receipts are estimated that they'll increase about $422,000, or about roughly 4% to $10.84 million. So if we pull all of those 4 categories together, the total revenue that we have available for fiscal year 21 is just over $141 million. Next, we'll look at expenditures. For general government personnel, we're estimating a 2% cost of living allowance, and also includes steps for eligible personnel. General government expenses are estimated to increase about 2%, unless otherwise noted. For the Chelmsford Public Schools, we're anticipating a $2 million increase in that budget for fiscal year 21. For Neshoba Valley Technical High School, we're projecting an estimated increase of $250,000 for fiscal year 21, and that's based on recent enrollment trend that we've seen. From information we've received from Neshoba, it looks as though there'll be 11 additional Chelmsford students for the upcoming year, so that's sort of driving that increase. Moving forward to debt service, as many of you know, we have 3 different categories of debt service in the town. We have excluded debt, non-excluded, and betterment-funded debt. As we know, excluded debt is used to finance projects wherever voters have approved a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion. And if we go to the next chart here, you see that excluded debt service is in the middle. It's shown in red. It's currently $4.23 million this fiscal year, and it's going to decline $582,000 in the next fiscal year, and it will keep on declining, as you see on the chart, eventually dropping to about $2 million by fiscal year 23. And that's a result of us continuing to pay down earlier sewer project debt. Non-excluded debt service is shown in blue on the chart. It's $7.54 million this year. It's projected to remain relatively flat at $7.53 million for the upcoming year, and declines eventually down to around $7.3 million going out. Betterment-funded debt service is shown in yellow, and that's what I had mentioned before. That's funded through sewer capital improvement fee revenue, and that's going to remain steady at $2.3 million going forward. On the next slide, a couple of other categories. We have employee benefits. Our Middlesex retirement assessment for the upcoming fiscal year will increase $639,000 to $9.5 million. That's a known number at this point, and it's based on the most latest actuarial valuation that was provided to Middlesex County Retirement System as of January 1st, 2018. We're estimating a increase of 5% for health insurance premiums. At this point in time, the actual cost is unknown, but 5% is a reasonable estimate at this point. And then if we pull all the various categories of expenditures together, you see that the total is $141.5 million. And then on the next slide, this sort of matches up. We match up our revenues and expenditures to give us the total outlook. And since you have the detailed forecast in front of you, I know the screen's a little hard to read, we're going to jump ahead to the summary. And here's a summary of how the overall budget forecast looks. For fiscal year 21 at this point, I'm projecting that we'll be able to produce a balanced budget. And then for the next 4 years ahead, they are projecting small deficits ranging from $40,000 for fiscal year 22 up to about $500,000 for fiscal year 25, which range anywhere from, if you look on a percentage basis, 0.03% up to 0.33%. So at this point, they look manageable. When we look at the forecast, it's important to remember that we're still early in the budget cycle, and there are three main uncertain factors that could have a big impact on the budget. We'll know a little more about some of these as we progress in the months ahead. The level of state aid will have better numbers in January, late January, when the governor releases his state budget with the local aid figures. We'll also know by February we should have a good idea of our health insurance premium increase for the current year. And just as a reminder how these things can affect the budget, we're currently spending $12.37 million for active employees and retirees' employees' health insurance. So you can see every 1% increase is another $123,000. And then the Neshoba assessment I mentioned earlier, we'll have a better idea around late January, early February of the actual Neshoba assessment. Moving forward, to discuss reserves for a moment. Our financial plan includes maintaining a healthy stabilization fund and dedicating reserves towards extraordinary capital when available. Some examples of extraordinary capital include the projects proposed under Articles 10 through 14 this evening. As the town manager said earlier in his opening remarks, we ended fiscal year 19 with $1.76 million in free cash. And this next slide has just a history from 2011 to the present. So you can see 1.76 million is just around 1.3% of our budgeted operating revenues. It's a bit of an improvement from last year, but you see it's still lower than some years that you see in the table. Next, we'll look at stabilization. This table shows the history of stabilization, general stabilization since 2010, and the updated plan going forward. You recall that during fiscal year 19, this body voted last October to transfer in $767,000 of free cash into the fund. There were no withdrawals from the fund during the fiscal year, and we earned investment gains of $562,000 thanks to an extremely strong investment market environment for both equities and fixed income investments. We closed the fiscal year on June 30th with a stabilization balance of just over $11 million, and the transfers out that you see on the outer years are there as contingencies for unforeseen events, possibly a significant storm or an emergency building repair. And then on the last slide, you see a graph showing the stabilization fund balance as a percentage of budgeted total operating revenue with the current fiscal year in red. And when you look at the graph, you'll see that we've maintained the fund during recent years very well. Following the strong year that we had for investments, it's now improved to about 8.1% of total budgeted revenue. And it's important that we make every stride to maintain the balance in the fund because it's needed to retain our AA plus bond rating, reduces our borrowing costs, and it gives us financial flexibility to respond to emergencies that may arise. Thank you, and that concludes the 5-year forecast.
Thank you, Mr. Souza.
Thank you, John. We have one final report on the presentations. This will be delivered by Evan Belansky, our Community Development Director. And this has to go, as I mentioned at the outset, regarding major redevelopment that's happened and happening and proposed to happen in the town center. Many of you obviously traveled through that area for years, and the question has always become, what's going to happen to that Oddfellows building, the old bank building by the Fisk House and so forth? And for years we sought solutions, but really everything was tied up with the fact that the property was under lease till the year June 30th, 2020, and that the lease sort of couldn't be unraveled because of the accounting and tax implications that were held by the Santander Bank, who leased all the property, including the branch office. Well, we're now within months of that lease terminating. It has not been extended or renewed. The branch bank will remain at the site. However, we've been in communication with the property owner, the real estate trust, within the last few years, and most recently within the last several weeks, regarding what will happen at the site. They've engaged surveyors, engineers, and so forth. And last week they presented a plan over at the public police station to the Planning Board, Historic District Commission, Historical Commission, and Conservation Commission regarding a proposed redevelopment project for that site that will be presented to the Planning Board formally in the weeks ahead. We're also at the cusp of the opening of the grist mill project located behind the Center Brickhouse Pizza, adjacent to the rail trail. The units there will be in occupancy within several weeks. And then finally, there's also a proposal before the Planning Board regarding the future use of 9 Acton Road, the former bowling alley site, going back a ways as you across from Bartlett Park as you leave the center heading down Acton Road. So with that as intro, I'll turn the microphone over to Evan Belansky, who will give an overview of what's before the community weeks ahead.
Good evening. So I am pleased to report that 6 years after the adoption of the Center Village Master Plan and 5 years after the adoption of the Village Center Overlay District, the town has an opportunity to advance potential implementation of the village vision with continued public investments in partnership with private investments. The town and this body continue to make public investments in the village via brick sidewalks, wayfinding signage, street furniture, utility depression, and the consideration of Article 18 in this town meeting. This slide displays the Beaver Brook walk concept with associated bridges and woodland trails, the Cushing Place Mass Works streetscape improvement project, and 3 multi-family developments representing tens of millions of private investment in the village. 11 Cushing, known as the grist mill, as the town manager mentioned, is pretty much all sold, all 32 units, with occupancy beginning this month. This project includes the construction of a portion of the Brook Walk, a pocket park, and public parking for the rail trail. All 3 elements will be deeded for open space and public access. The next project that the town manager mentioned is the Oddfellows Fisk Santander properties. As the town manager mentioned, the developers presented their conceptual proposal last Tuesday evening. This consists of the reuse of the Oddfellows building with a 100-seat restaurant on the first floor and apartments above, and the construction of a new multi-family building with underground parking, as well as the participation in the Brook Walk. Final project that was mentioned is 9 Acton Road. This project is currently in front of the board for conceptual consideration. This project consists of the replacement of an underutilized and partially vacant first-generation commercial building with a proposed multi-family development with underground parking and participation in the development of the Brook Walk concept. That concludes this report.
Thank you, Mr. Belansky.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
At this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the concept of a consent agenda. Second? Okay. Clear, not. Okay. Okay, so that'll be Articles 2 through 6. And just raise hands, or is it on the machine? I guess we'll just raise hands. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, we have a consent agenda. Mr. Manager?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'll walk through the 5 articles and explain why they're put on the consent agenda, because they're pretty much housekeeping articles. The first one, Article 2, is a motion to rescind the $98,229 authorized but unissued debt balance for the $1.2 million acquisition of the Chelmsford Forum. So in essence, we had $1.2 million in borrowing authority. We used basically slightly under $100,000 less than that, and therefore we have to take that off the books so that the books are clean. Otherwise, the auditors, and it's on the town's books as authorized ability to issue debt. So that would remove this, even though the monies were never ever borrowed. Article 3 is to rescind an unexpended appropriation for the Progress Avenue sewer pump station. Back at the April 2015 spring annual town meeting, there was an $825,000 appropriation for the reconstruction of the Progress Avenue sewer pump station. That project is completed, and we have a balance of $93,200 remaining. And again, we now vote those monies to put it back into the sewer system capacity impact fund from which those monies came. Article 4 is the rescission of 4 community preservation fund articles, which projects again were completed. Just over $7,000 for the Oak Hill Conservation Land acquisition, approximately $15,000 for the Pond Street acquisition, just over $1,300 for the Center Town Hall restoration, and just over $3,750 for the North Town Hall restoration. So again, these balances are left over. They're then put back into the Community Preservation Fund for future use and appropriation by future town meeting. And then Article 5 is the recurring article regarding the sale of lots and graves to the Cemetery Improvement and Development Fund. This has to do with the Pine Ridge Cemetery expansion projects that is ongoing. The land has been cleared over there. They're doing the grading and seeding. Now they've got to sort of do the above ground work of completing the fencing and the water lines and catch basins, and then ultimately final loam and seeding. So again, you'll see this again at Springtown meeting as they continue their progress. And then the last one under this article, you first saw this a year ago. This is under what's known as the Commonwealth Transportation Infrastructure Fund. It's an appropriation of just over $7,800, and we're going to appropriate this money as a portion of a project to install Americans with Disabilities Act compliant sidewalks along Golden Cove Road. Again, this funding sort of comes from legislation enacted at the State House back in 2016, where the state adopts a 20-cent per ride assessment for ride sharing, commonly referred to as Uber or Lyft and so forth. And basically half of the assessment goes to the Commonwealth and half goes to the community where the ride originates. The law requires that town meeting appropriate these funds, and then we also have to report the expenditures annually to the state. This is our second year. They do this distribution by calendar year. You can see the number of such rides increased in the past year. We had just over 50,000 rides in calendar year 2017. We had over 78,000 rides in calendar year 2018. And again, they're required to be used under the statute to improve the transportation network. So that's what takes place under this article. That concludes the presentation of the articles under the consent agenda, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Articles 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of Articles 2 through 6.
Now's the time for question and answer and discussion, if anyone has any. There being none, we will now vote to approve the entire consent agenda, which is Articles 2 through 6. The final vote is 135 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions. The article passes. Mr. Manager, Article 7.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 7 is funding for collective bargaining agreements. I'm going to turn this article over to my assistant, Michael McCall, who I have the fortunate ability to utilize his skills and background to address our bargaining with our employees, and have Michael explain the 3 agreements that we're bringing before you this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As the manager alluded to, one of my chief responsibilities becoming the assistant town manager is working on collective bargaining. And this evening we present to you 3 of the collective bargaining agreements that we reached this fall. The first is the Police Patrol Union. We try to work within what we call in common parlance a 222 agreement, which means a 2% cost of living increase over the 3 years of the 3-year contract. When we sat down with the patrol as well as the police administration, it became apparent through our negotiations that there was an issue with what we would refer to as retention and recruitment. It was demonstrated by the patrolmen's union as well as the management and administration that we had one of the lowest academy wages in the Merrimack Valley when compared to our peers. It was also evident that some of our mid-career officers were looking elsewhere based on the pay that we were presenting. And this came about for a variety of reasons. We hadn't adjusted our salary schedule, but more importantly, as many of you know, the state offers what is called the Quinn Bill, which is a tuition incentive program for police officers depending upon their level of education. And over the years, although it was initially funded 50% by the state and 50% by the town, the state stopped funding the Quinn Bill. Now, we were fortunate many years ago to have in our contract language that would exempt the town from having to pick up the entire portion of the bill. However, over time, many of our peers who weren't as fortunate wound up paying 100% for all of their officers. As such, we wound up being at a disadvantage with other towns offering what we would call full Quinn, where we were only paying half Quinn. That meant instead of getting your 10% for an associate's, your 20% for a bachelor's, and so on, we were only offering half of that. So in order to make it more competitive and to address the issues for our mid-career officers, we are now funding full Quinn. So what you will see up here is we have the 2% annual cost of living increase. We eliminated the bottom 2 steps from our salary table, thus making our entry-level salary much more competitive with our peers. And we increased the Quinn Bill incentive to match what all the other towns are doing. And that represents $215,000, which you saw on the previous slide. Similarly, with the highway employees, they have a different agreement. They don't have the same type of salary table. And what we're trying to achieve with them, again, would be a 222 salary increment for cost of living. However, looking at some of the internal comparisons with some of the other departments here in town, cemetery, facilities, stormwater, there was a disparity between some of the wages in the various classifications within the Highway Association. So we did reach an agreement based on the 222 over 3 years, but we made some adjustments in the first year to the base salary to help bring their wages up in comparison to the other departments. And in year 3, we also added a small adjustment. And some of those were made in recognition of the work that was being done out of classification and for some of the language changes made in the contract. And lastly, we reached an agreement with our library workers at the Chelmsford Public Library. Again, the contract was for 3 years based on a 2% cost of living over each of the 3 years. And we've recognized the folks that were at the top step 10. We decided to offer them, to meet parity with one of the other unions, a $300 addition to their base pay in that top step. So that represents all 3 of the collective bargaining agreements this evening, and I would just ask for your support on Article 7. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of the Chelmsford Police Association Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 110 agreement. However, the Finance Committee has not had the opportunity to meet and review the other two agreements.
Okay, thank you. Does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
The Board of Selectmen recommended approval by a vote of 4-0 with one abstention.
Okay, now's an opportunity for town meeting reps to ask questions if they have any, or to engage in discussion, or both.
Mr. Moderator, Dave Rand from Precinct 2. I'd like to know, this education, 10% associate's degree, is this in police work or any associate's degree or what?
The terms of our agreement, they have to be criminal justice related, specifically in criminal justice, law-oriented, but yes, it has to be related to the field of police work, specifically criminal justice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary France, Precinct 6. Mike, could you go over once again the amounts of money for each of these? Like it isn't up there on that slide. Okay.
For the Patrolmen's Union, to go back to July 1st, it's $215,000. For the highway workers, that's $65,500, and for the library employees, it's $25,620.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jean Lebrecq, Precinct 7. I just have two questions. Where is the Chelmsford Public Works mentioned in this booklet of the collective bargaining?
So that went to print before we were able to resolve it. The motion is generically worded to address collective bargaining agreements. As often is the case, we start our collective bargaining back before the end of the fiscal year. We try and start before July 1st. Oftentimes we can't reach an agreement. And what happens is, as fall town meeting approaches, it often becomes an incentive for both parties to reach an agreement, and that was the case here. The library, we only reached agreement about 2 weeks ago, and we reached an agreement last week with the Patrolmen's Union. But I'm sure town council would explain to you that the way that that particular motion is written, act in relation thereto, we are allowed to modify the dollar amount, and so we put the other two agreements on there.
The Chelmsford Public Works wasn't mentioned in the booklet, right?
Correct.
And there is a bylaw 154 2B that would make this vote impossible on this because there's a 7-day rule that you have to notify the town reps or the people in the town 7 days before you vote on this.
Mr. Moderator, to you and possibly town council, but I believe that particular motion that Ms. Lebrecq is referring to is for the publication of the Finance Committee book and not the content of the articles.
But it's supposed to have 7 days before, not 7 minutes, you know.
But again, the motion that is printed in that book, I'm not changing the motion. It's the dollar amount.
But it doesn't even mention the highway department.
Good evening. I'm Paul Cohen, town manager again. As I said, in the 13 years that I've been here as town manager, I believe on 4 or 5, almost a half dozen of occasions, these agreements come down to the deadline. The warrant article reads to fund collective bargaining agreements. That's what's in the warrant that was signed back in September by the Board of Selectmen. It was the information that was available to the Finance Committee at the publication of the booklet, but it is not unprecedented, and unfortunately, it's the nature of the world we live in today, where we had asked and encouraged the unions to come to us. We'd like to present this earlier. It's just the nature of how the process works. And so I believe what I'm saying is we are not in violation of the bylaw. The bylaw and warrant notes that we're going to vote collective bargaining agreements. That's what we're doing this evening. It does not in the warrant articles identify specific collective bargaining agreements. It says we're asking the town meeting to vote on collective bargaining agreements. That's been the case in the past. It continues to be the case, and unfortunately, it'll probably be the case in the future. So I just respectfully disagree. We are not violating the town's bylaw.
Well, even though it's been done in the past, it doesn't mean it's correct. because the bylaw specifically states the 7-day warning.
Again,
I don't know what else.
a town council will weigh in.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speakers. Section 154.2 of the town code actually addresses warrant articles. I think we're dealing with a little bit of confusion between warrant articles and motions on those warrant articles. So if you actually take a look at the warrant article for Article 7, it states to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds a sum of money to be used to fund employee contract agreements between the town and its collective bargaining units, or act in relation thereto. So this was published well prior to the deadline and therefore is appropriate.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? There being none, we will vote to approve Article 7, which is to appropriate $215,000 for the Chelmsford Police Association, the police contract $65,500 for the Public Works, highway employees, and $25,620 to fund employee contract agreements with the Federation of Teachers Library Personnel. The final vote is 138 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 abstention. The article passes. Article 8.
Mr. Moderator, request no action under Article 8. We had this as a placeover in case there were amendments to the current fiscal year operating budget that began last July 1st.
Okay, then let's go to Article 9.
Article 9 is a request to transfer funds from free cash to the Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund. I'm going to turn the podium over to Finance Director John Souza, who is our custodian of funds, who will explain what's taking place here under this article.
Good evening. Under this article, the $384,996 that you see on the slide is the amount of interest and investment earnings that we earned on the sewer capital improvement fund holdings that we have of roughly $9 million. That's the $1.05 surcharge that all of us pay on the base sewer rate that's to be dedicated towards future debt service costs for the sewer system. And we also have approximately $1 million in sewer betterment funds on hand. The idea here is that under Mass General Law, all interest earnings must flow into the general fund unless otherwise provided by law. So that's why it requires a vote at town meeting to take these funds and set this aside into the Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund. And what this will do is this will allow us to dedicate these funds, reserve them to pay off future years' debt service for the sewer construction project. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 9.
Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of Article 9.
Now's the opportunity for questions or discussion, if anyone has any. Apparently not, so we will vote to authorize $384,996 from free cash to the Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund. Unanimous approval, 139 to 0. Article 10.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 10 is a request for an appropriation, a transfer of $400,000 from free cash for the portion, paying of the portion of the replacement of the portion of the roof at the South Row Elementary School. Last June, the Massachusetts School Building Authority voted to invite the town of Chelmsford into the accelerated repair program after upon receiving submission that was approved by the school committee and the Board of Selectmen to repair a portion and replace a portion of the roof at the South Row Elementary School. How this works is it's a state-run program in which the state offers financial incentives, in this case, to maintain existing schools for educational purposes, so in order to preserve their life, so that you don't go into a costly school replacement project. Under the program, the Massachusetts School Building Authority selects the owner's project manager and designer. That has taken place at this point in time. We met with them last week out at the South Row Elementary School, and we have with the owner's project manager, and we're scheduled to meet with the designer this coming week out at the school. The schematic design study is expected to be completed by the end of the calendar year, and the goal would be to do procurement during the mid to late winter in order to begin construction at the end of the school year so that the work can be completed over the summer so that it doesn't cause any safety or other concerns for the students there. And again, where it is only a partial roof replacement, the work can be accomplished in that time period. And we expect that when this work is completed, we would receive a reimbursement rate of approximately 50% from the state for this project. You can see the portions, hopefully you can see, it's kind of hard because of the portions, but basically you've got the kitchen and gymnasium areas and the little canopy up in the front of the school, so it's not a very complex project. The other portions of the roof, in case you're wondering in terms of, well, why is it just these portions, the other portions of the roof were improved when we put solar panels on the South Row Elementary School several years back. So again, with the completion of this project, it'll complete the roofing project and should serve the community for the years to come. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 10.
Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of Article 10.
Now's an opportunity for reps to ask questions or engage in discussion. There appears to be none, so this vote is for Article 10 is to authorize $400,000 from free cash for partial roof replacement at South Row Elementary School. The article passes 140 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions. Article 11.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 11 is a request for a transfer of $95,000 in free cash for the purchase of a replacement breathing air compressor unit for the Chelmsford Fire Department. The current unit that we have in operation was manufactured back in December of 1998. It is past the end of its expected useful life. And when we had inspection this past year, the current unit is no longer in compliance with the new OSHA standards that are in place now for municipalities across the Commonwealth, and also the National Fire Protection Agency standards, because it does not have a carbon monoxide automatic shutdown alarm, and it doesn't have a way to digitally record, log and record the fill action and cylinder information. So this is the type of unit that basically would be replaced in terms of the current unit. And again, it's those air packs that you see the firefighters put on as they go into confined space. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 11.
Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval for Article 11.
Time for discussion, questions? There appear to be none, So we shall vote on Article 11 to appropriate $95,000 from free cash for the purchase of a replacement breathing air compressor unit for the Chelmsford Fire Department. Unanimous approval of Article 11, 143 in favor, no opposition, no abstentions. Article 12.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 12 is a request for a transfer of $80,000 from free cash for the purchase and installation of rectangular rapid flashing beacons at crosswalks adjacent to the Chelmsford Public Schools and at the High Street intersection of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Specifically, the locations would be at the South Row School at Boston Road, Center School at Billerica Road, McCarthy School at North Road, the high school at Richardson and Crooked Spring Road, and at the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, as mentioned earlier, at High Street. The reason for this request is the interest of public safety, and obviously the case primarily is for the interest of safety of school children who are at these intersections. And the reason for these devices is the beacons are installed on both sides of the street. Here's what one of them look like. You may have seen this type. It's on both sides. If you've traveled on Route 27 crossing the rail trail in Westford, you see those strobe flashing lights that take place. And that's been there for a couple years now. And basically, the statistics show that it significantly increases pedestrian safety at these locations. Also, many of you may have traveled down Groton Center recently. They have a series of these past the Lawrence School and then downtown Groton, the same type of devices. It's the modern and economical way of enhancing public safety, again, at a reasonable cost per unit. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 12.
Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
The Board of Selectmen unanimously approve recommendation of Article 12.
Opportunity for discussion or questions?
Claire Chenot, Precinct 7. Could you just give us an idea of what the future brings on installing these throughout the community?
The first and foremost function was at the elementary schools. We're also in discussions with our legislative delegation to look at some of the state highways because under state law, we don't have the authority to install or manage devices on state routes. For example, if you're out by the North Fire Station, the North Town Hall, the Chelmsford Community Center, there's a dangerous crosswalk there. I've made a request to Representative Golden, and we're also having Highway make a request directly to the Mass Highway Department to have one installed at that location because we've heard from the neighbors in that area that's a dangerous area to cross. One of the other ones would be on Littleton Road as you go out 110, as you know, by the mobile home park, by the new convenience store and the Chelmsford Housing Authority units there. We also would request one at that location. So that sort of goes into the state roadways. We'll then sort of take a next pass in terms of what can we do in other locations around town. But again, our first and foremost was on school safety, and then again trying to address some state roadways. And then we'll work over the winter to see if they may go in other locations in town.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Robert Walton, Precinct 9. I'm going to vote against this, not because I'm against safety, but the town currently, we all suffer currently with the most arcane, ancient school zone lights known to man in the Commonwealth. They're on the start of September, and they get shut off when school's done in June. Every school vacation, every snow day, every half day, blink, 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 20 miles an hour. Thousands of motorists are inconvenienced every school vacation, every holiday, every half day, because our system is right out of the 1950s. I'd rather see the money spent, or money spent to upgrade our school zone lights and make it more compatible with when there's no school, the lights shouldn't be flashing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, we will be voting on Article 12 to appropriate $80,000 for rectangular rapid flashing beacons at the public schools, High Street intersection with the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. The article passes 137 in favor, 4 opposed, no abstentions. Article 13.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 13 is a request for a transfer of $250,000 from free cash for the purchase and installation of a bituminous concrete top coat along the exterior surface area of the Department of Public Works facility located at 9 Alpha Road. Again, when the facility was opened, as I mentioned earlier, back 6 years ago in 2013, we had a binder coat. At this point, the binder coat is at the end of its useful life, and we want to put the top coat on now to avoid additional costs of basically having to reinstall the binder coat. Here's some photos of examples of the binder coat that's out there. You can see that you're getting some deterioration of the binder, and as you really start hearing the salt sheds, you can really see what's taking place here. So again, we respectfully ask your consideration appropriating funds for this purchase. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 13.
Does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of Article 13.
Any questions? Discussion? There being none, we will vote to approve Article 13 to appropriate $250,000 from free cash to purchase and the installation of bituminous concrete top coat for the exterior surface area of the DPW on Alpha Road. The article passes 140 in favor, 2 opposed, and no abstentions. Article 14.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 14 is a request for a transfer of $550,242 from free cash for the resurfacing and installation of granite curbing on a portion of the Chelmsford High School parking lot. As I mentioned earlier, back at 2018 spring annual town meeting, the appropriation of over $1 million was done to resurface the rear high school parking lot area. We now basically got to come back and complete the job for the remaining portion of the lot. And again, here's a photo that sort of shows you what's at the front entrance of the concrete surface that's out there. And again, we want to complete this work and then return to putting capital into the facility in the future. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 14.
Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of Article 14.
Is there any discussion or questions?
Brian Latina, Precinct 4. Mr. Moderator, through you to the speaker, to the presenter. We had some sand and salt and snow money left over this year, and we paved a certain number of miles of road sections at a time. How much space did we pave with that $350,000?
I'll ask the Public Works Director or Assistant Public Works Director, but how much work was done with the snow and ice balance this past spring?
Thank you. So with that, I believe the number was $300,000, and that translated into approximately 4 lane miles of roadway to be ground and overlaid.
So we ground it, and then we ground the surface of 4 lane miles for $300,000. And we're asking for $500,000 to do the front teacher parking lot at the high school.
Yeah, this is full-depth reclamation, though, not just a mill and an overlay. This would be full reclaim of the parking lot, all new curb and all new sidewalks.
Down below the subsurface, or we're just grinding it off?
Grind it
So
all
it's
up.
going into dirt?
Yep, you pulverize it, basically.
Okay. And we're putting in granite curbs as well?
Correct, all new curbing, all new sidewalk.
Okay. And the last few town meetings, we've voted on possibly replacing the high school. Why would we spend $500,000 putting granite curbs and asphalt in front of the building that we might end up replacing?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the Speaker. Yes, the town has submitted an application to the Massachusetts School Building Authority regarding a new high school project. In the event that such a project is funded, there are no plans to abandon the current high school project. During the discussions on a future high school project, the project considerations have always been to maintain our newest school facility, the new high school that was built in 1974, as for educational purposes, most likely being the future middle school in the event the community were to build a new high school. So therefore, maintaining this building, maintaining the parking area is a sound investment of the monies because this building is in the town's plans for the indefinite future.
So again, the plan is to leave the physical building here with the same driveway, and this curb is good for another 30-plus years. The concrete one was certainly.
Yes,
it hasn't been paved in 30 years?
Exactly. This is original back to 1974, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further questions or discussion?
Alvin Drayman, Precinct 4. Is it necessary to do granite? Since we're not quite sure of the long-term use, it hasn't been granite since it was first made. Could we save some money by not using granite?
I'm going to turn the microphone over to Steve Yonley again. Yes, there are other alternatives that are less costly. However, they aren't without less maintenance.
So we could do what's there now is concrete curb. We could do concrete curb at roughly $7 or $8 less a foot, but the longevity of it is not the same as granite. With the salt use now and with the plowing, it's going to chip, it breaks, the rebar shows. We've replaced spot portions of that, patch portions. Granite, you don't have to worry about that. It's just far more durable.
What is you said it's about $7 less a foot, right?
Correct.
What is the cost of granite and what is the cost of concrete?
Our current bid is $35.90 a lineal foot installed and supplied granite curb. So take $7 or $8 from that, call it $27.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any more questions? Any discussion? There appears to be none. So we're going to vote on Article 14, which is to appropriate $550,242 from free cash for the resurfacing and installation of granite curbing for a portion of the Chelmsford High School parking lot. And the article passes 135 in favor, 8 opposed, no abstentions. Article 15.
Mr. Moderator, seek no action under Article 15. At this point, the town meeting has appropriated all of the town's free cash.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Article 16.
For similar purposes, that we request no action under Article 16.
Okay, let's try Article 17.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 17 is request for appropriations from the Community Preservation Fund. The first request is a transfer of $214,200 for the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for the relocation, reconstruction, and enhancement of the ball fields located at Roberts Field. Again, this is sort of another phasing project. You may recall back at the 2017 master plan, we completed the fully handicapped accessible playground, which is highly trafficked and tremendous success and resource for the community. Part of that project was the loss of one of the ball fields at Friendship Park. And so the plan calls for the replacement of that field, but also the relocation of the baseball fields to the back portion of the property, and then to put the rectangular field, as shown in the diagram, up closer to the front by the parking lot entrance. And so what needs to take place here is we need to, obviously do the regrading of those fields and installation of those fields for the purpose for a more open look. I don't know how well you can see in the photos, but you'd sort of have these backstops for baseball in the middle of the open field space. And so the goal is to put them towards the rear part of the property and then allow the entire area of the field to be open. And what that means is in today's construction of ball fields, you no longer put outfield fences in. You basically use the temporary fences and so forth, the fencing at all, and therefore that allows the multi-use field and also for multi-ages as well. So again, Public Works has assembled a project budget for this appropriation. The upcoming steps following town meeting approval this evening would be to have the Public Works complete a survey, do the design and permitting this winter, and then do the well installation in the springtime, and then work during the summer months for the site prep, grading, and irrigation, and then finish off the summer, early fall with the backstop installation and seeding, so that these fields could grow in and be utilized during the 2021 season. We also have the fortunate happenstance of in the state's operating budget for this current year, we received an earmark appropriation of $50,000 for a perimeter walking trail around the fields, and so it's easy to accomplish this work at that same time to put in the new fitness equipment and material for that walking circuit around the fields. And again, it's sort of a beneficial opportunity for the community. So thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 17.
Board of Selectmen have a recommendation.
Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of Article 17.
Now's an opportunity for questions, discussion.
Glenn Thorne, Precinct 5. Is this the drawing of how they want to lay out the fields?
Yes, it's an illustrative drawing of how the fields will be laid out. Yes.
Yeah, the only question I had is the hitters in the lower left-hand field could be hitting into the hitters in the upper right-hand field. So you might consider taking the pitching mound and rotating it approximately 90 degrees in the upper right-hand field so that they're not hitting into the back of people that are in the upper right-hand field, if you know what I mean. If there was a fence there to protect them, that's one reason, but they should be looking at each other. Personally, I think this project is a fabulous project. I mean, the town should be very proud of what they've done here. So a little reorientation of the upper right-hand baseball field would make it a lot safer for people, I believe.
Thank you.
But I'm happy to support this because it's a tremendous place. I've got grandchildren that use it and love it. I just want to rotate that upper right-hand field 90 degrees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meredith Moore, Precinct 3. Does this cost also include some sort of drainage for the back of that field? Everybody knows that it gets completely flooded in the springtime.
I'm going to let Steve Yonley, who's designing this, speak to your question.
So I'm currently not planning on any drainage until I get the survey back, but I did carry, if you looked at the budget, I carried a fairly healthy contingency of 20% that if I find that I need to do, some kind of drainage system, or even a small one, a localized one at a certain field, I will have the contingency to do that.
Okay.
Phil Stanway, Precinct 7. I was at Robert Fields on the way over here, and I found out that there is still no handicap parking on the upper limit. I keep on guessing it's going to come,
Is this debate, or are you asking a question?
Debate, yeah, sorry.
You're on.
So I was there and there is no handicap parking. And in fact, they've added rocks to the upper level, so it's harder to get a wheelchair through. So unfortunately, I cannot support something that if it's not handicapped accessible. Any open space, any park that doesn't meet the current ADA requirements, which is parking in the upper limit.
Thank you.
Paul Regazio, Precinct 7. Just a question regarding the size of the baseball fields. Are those for youth softball or full-size high school fields or what?
No, it's youth baseball. I believe in my conversations with them, it's kind of like the U12 and under age groups that would play up there, not softball and not high school age.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions, discussion? There being none, we will vote on Article 17, which is to appropriate $214,000, $200 from the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for relocation, reconstruction, and enhancement of ball fields at Roberts Field. The article passes 118 in favor, 22 opposed, and 2 abstentions. Article 18.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 18 is another request for appropriation under the Community Preservation Fund. This pertains to a pedestrian bridge and work in a general area at Beaver Brook in the town center. And I'm going to turn the podium over to Evan Belansky, our Community Development Director, who also serves as a member of the Community Preservation Committee.
Good evening again. This article represents the same request associated with an unsuccessful state grant application for the same purpose. The request is $60,000 using Community Preservation Commission funds to create recreational and open space opportunities. The funds would be used to hire a consultant to work with a dedicated citizens committee to conduct a feasibility study to assist with project development and preliminary design and engineering and budgeting for the Woodland Trail and 2 bridges over Beaver Brook. The study area is approximately 3 acres bisected by the Beaver Brook. The Conservation Commission owns some of the land trust owns some additional acreage, and some of the property is privately owned via grist mill. This article does not propose any physical work to be done. The original state grant application was supported by the Center Village Master Planning Committee, the Conservation Commission, and the Chelmsford Land Trust. As I mentioned, a dedicated committee made up of those 3 entities, as well as opportunities for a representative from DPW, representative from Community Preservation Commission, and several citizens at large is available. Additional CPC funds will be needed for further implementation. The slide in front of you depicts the conceptual layout and vision for the Phase 1 Beaver Brook Walk. This was created as part of the state grant application. In red highlights the woodland trails and the primary bridge and the secondary bridge are also annotated on this map. This would be used as a starting point for feasibility process discussions. That concludes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Belansky. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 18.
Board of Selectmen have a recommendation.
Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval for Article 18.
Any questions, discussion?
Tom Fall, Precinct 5. As to the last article we're talking, is this going to have anybody be looking at handicap accessibility on these?
Sure. By law, we're required to comply to the maximum extent feasible. As I mentioned, this is designed to be a woodland trail, so it's not intended to be paved or cemented.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Stanway, Precinct 7. I've looked at this project and I keep on thinking back to, this is discussion by the way, I've looked at this project and I look at Oak Hill, where we had a whole arrangement of people who said, we're going to let you use our land, we're going to let you cross our land. And as we know today, none of those happened. Conservation restriction never happened. And I see a similar situation here. The Land Trust has not agreed to support this particular one. The state one they agreed to support, but not the local one. The 9 Acton Road project, there's no guarantee there. So we're in the same situation we were in Oak Hill. I mean, I don't support it, and I'm a Land Trust member. So I think we're too early on this one. Till we get agreements in writing from the Land Trust, Conservation, and whatever's going to happen at 9 Acton Road, because who knows if that project's going to move forward. It's irresponsible to spend $60,000. I think it should be put aside when agreements are signed, then we can move forward, but not before.
Thank you.
Alvin Draymond, Precinct 4. What is the estimated cost of the entire, I know you haven't had an engineer, that's the point of the study, but what is the estimated cost of the entire project? Because if we're going to do a study, we probably want to do the project. So the two numbers are related.
Correct. Bridges can range from $10,000 for a prefab off the shelf to a couple $100,000 for something that's customized. The primary bridge span is about 40 feet, and the secondary span is probably a short 10 to 15 feet. The Woodland Trail is something that the town has significant experience working with Eagle Scout projects and volunteers on, so I don't anticipate that to be a significant expenditure.
So what's the bottom line number?
That's the point of the feasibility study. As the previous speaker asked, there is no proposal. The point of the feasibility study is to get a group of stakeholders, Chelmsford residents and interested parties, in a room together to agree on the proposal. Difficult to enter into agreements without a proposal, and right now there is no proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Badriu Pilipan, Precinct 5. So would you have the results of the survey and everything else to the committee that's going to be formed, or is the committee going to be in parallel to the survey, or?
The committee will work with a consultant to conduct the feasibility study. There's been no work prepared prior to.
And could you give a sense of what the work will be in terms of what is the $60,000 for? What kind of work would be done as part of the feasibility?
Sure. We'll be starting with a map such as this or similar maps. Site visits will take place. The primary first objective will be to identify the location of the primary bridge. The primary bridge is envisioned to be somewhere near the existing dam because that is a logical brook crossing. Once that primary location is identified conceptually, then you need to do some surveying to identify what type of bridge, what type of engineering, so you can do some budgeting for the fabrication and installation of that bridge. A similar process, but much smaller in nature, would take place for the secondary bridge. Once the two locations of the bridges are identified, then you can locate a woodland trail to connect those two bridges on the opposite side of the brook.
A follow-up question. Has there been townspeople demanding or suggesting this in terms of a survey or a master plan?
Sure, yes. So this concept is well documented and articulated in the 2013 Center Village Master Plan. It is a concept that dates back to 1998. Was the first time the Beaver Brook Walk concept was put on a plan and mapped out. So to answer your question, this concept is well documented and well thought out and articulated in many planning and visioning plans in Chelmsford.
I had one quick question because the previous speaker raised a question of right-of-ways and other aspects around that. Could you give some color to what the process of getting those right-of-ways and how long that might take, even if a committee were to be established?
Sure. So the only right-of-way or easement or agreement that's necessary is along the land trust property and a small portion of privately owned land that's associated with the grist mill development. The grist mill development, in their decision with the planning board, agreed to cooperate. So that's in the spirit and context of the planning board decision. Obviously, that project is building part of the Brook Walk, so I think it's fair to say they support the concept and implementation. If the land trust is unwilling or uninterested to come to an agreement, then there is no project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn Thorne, Precinct 5. I think you almost answered my question with your last comment, Evan. Who speaks for the Chelmsford Land Trust?
My understanding is they have a board of 12 or 13 members.
And have they been contacted at all?
Well, they were contacted as part of the initial state grant application. As I mentioned in my initial presentation, this request has not changed. The application, the request in front of you this evening is exactly the same scope, same budget.
So the Chelmsford Land Trust has heard about what you're proposing here because it's been proposed before.
Absolutely.
And have they spoken in favor or against it, or
Yes.
have they any opinion at all?
As part of the state grant application, they submitted a letter of support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy Arroway, Precinct 1. Mr. Moderator, through you to the presenter. Evan, what is the relationship between this proposed trail and the proposed development on Acton Road?
So all three developments that I mentioned in the report are required to participate in the Brook Walk implementation as part of the zoning bylaw. So 9 Acton Road participation is not determined yet. They've indicated to the planning board that they are willing and interested to participate. So I would expect and assume that, similar to Grist Mill, that if there is an approval forthcoming, that they would be building the Woodland Trail on their private property. Their conceptual plans show a concrete plaza or patio abutting the proposed envisioned brick walk. They've also indicated that they'd be willing and interested to participate in the funding and/or construction of the secondary bridge.
Do they have land on their property to build that trail on, or are they relying on adjacent properties?
No, they do have land.
Thank you.
Hi, Emily Antel, Precinct 2. What is the total length of this trail?
So the circuit, including the red lines that you see there, plus the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, would create a quarter-mile circuit loop.
Okay, I'm seeing on a website designed to help folks in wheelchairs and with other, handicapped issues, that there are plenty of trails that are a half mile or less, many a quarter mile or a third of a mile, that are wheelchair accessible. And I think that that is something that we should make sure that we look into and place some emphasis on that, because we
Sure.
want our community to be widely accessible to everybody.
That's one of the reasons for the feasibility study, for a dedicated committee to figure out what community values this Woodland Trail should have.
Thank you.
Brian Latinas, Precinct 4, you can start the clock. This was fascinating to me, a couple of reasons. One is we're looking possibly to put 3 5-story condo development buildings, one at 9 Acton Road, one behind the Oddfellows, what used to be Shawmut Bank, and take over that parking lot, and another one that just went in on Grist Mill. I'm told the Grist Mill properties are about $500,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment, and the 104 Turnpike Road facility up by me is now occupied. The school kids are in there. We'll see how much generated money we get out of those. Point being, 5 or 6 years ago, when my son was looking to be an Eagle Scout, he was offered that project to build the primary bridge, and we surveyed it, checked it out like Eagle Scout parents would be doing. The bridge is actually a portion of the rail trail. It was a turnout, I believe, for a train trestle that went over the thing, and there are rocks that have fallen down into what used to be an Indian weir there where they captured salmon. So there's a whole bunch of structure there already, and it was kind of an Eagle project. What we're voting on tonight is a path through the woods with a couple of bridges, and we have, it looks like, about 3 developers that are going to be spending millions of dollars on buildings that would probably love to pay for this. So I'm looking at an Eagle project, and we're talking about voting $60,000 to survey it and look at it and have somebody come back and write a report that probably none of us will read. I think it'd be better to actually build the bridge, or maybe get a couple Eagle Scouts out there and build the bridge. I'm going to vote no.
Thank you.
This will be discussion. Sue Carter, Precinct 5. I'm on the board of, I'm a director for the Chelmsford Land Conservation Trust. We're a board of 9. Phil Stanway, standing behind me, is also one. The Land Trust has not voted on the proposal to use town money for this study. The grant money, if it came from the state, it was no money out of the Chelmsford residents' pockets directly. I'm also a civil engineer, and we do studies like this in other towns for other conservation commissions. And with the current technology of being able to use LiDAR to get your topography in floodplain, and then with GPS to be able to locate wetlands, $60,000 for 3 acres of land, $20,000 an acre, seems very high to me. And in light of that, I'm voting no, and would encourage other people to as well.
Thank you.
Phil Stanway, Precinct 7. I just want to clarify Woodland Trail. The trails through the Land Trust are probably the most primitive in the town, because as the Land Trust wants to keep the trails as they were 100 years ago, they are barely usable in the summer in certain sections, and they're closed all winter. There's no plowing, there's no leaf blowing off. They're very, very rough trails, probably our roughest open space trails in town. We don't like bikes on them, and there's at one point, there's about a 60-foot drop into the water, and that really concerns me with bikes out there. It's fine for summer walking, to enjoy yourself. Don't even think about it in the winter, and if you're going to take the high train with a bike, you're going to run into real problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? There being none, apparently, we will vote on Article 18 to appropriate $60,000 from Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for the planning and design of a pedestrian bridge across Beaver Brook in the town center. The article fails, 25 in favor, 108 opposed, 7 abstentions. Article 19.
Article 19 is to the establishment of a commercial facade and sign improvement program. So the first question that's been posed since the inception of this discussion was, why would the town spend public subsidy on private property? This slide indicates 60 years of compelling public interest that the town has related to historic preservation planning and preservation. Based upon through the process, and particularly discussions in front of Finance Committee. This slide was added to the presentation. This is an example image. It's not of the center. That was asked at pre-town meeting. So it's intended to demonstrate that the public room extends from one building facade through the sidewalk, through the street, across the street sidewalk, and onto the other facade on the opposite side of the street. It creates an image or impression for a visitor using the village area. The program seeks to provide grants to the Center Village as well as the Vinyl Square. These are the two designated districts. What is being requested is $100,000 with $50,000 dedicated to each district for 5 commercial projects within each district. Projects would receive up to $10,000 grant upon approval from the Design Review Committee. Based upon discussion at pre-town meeting, the program is intended to be flexible based upon the level of interest related to districts and number of projects. Projects will require an applicant to hire consultants to prepare plans, submit applications, and attend meetings. This is estimated to cost approximately $3,000. Based upon this, the program can essentially be viewed as requiring a 30% match. Because we're proposing to use CPC funds, there's very specific requirements that are required by law. First one is that the project must be designated historic by the Historical Commission. The project must comply with the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation. The town has significant experience with these standards. In North, the North Town Hall had to comply with these standards, and in the center, the rehabilitation of the Center for the Arts also complied with these standards. In exchange for the $10,000 grant, the program would require a 10-year preservation agreement to be executed between the building owner and the town of Chelmsford to protect that public investment. As I mentioned, all projects will require review and approval by a design review committee. For purposes of the center, if it is located within the district, the historic district, then the Historic District Commission would serve as the design review committee. If it's located in the Vinyl Square district or outside of the village historic district, then the Historical Commission will be the design review committee. Next two slides are visual examples. These are conceptual in nature. They were prepared by the Chelmsford Historical Commission during their review and approval process of this program. These are visual examples indicating or articulating the spirit and intent of the facade and sign improvement program. There's examples from both Center Village as well as Vinyl Square. This slide represents the two designated districts, which are being requested to vote on this evening within the article and program manual is two specific designated districts. The image on the left is Center Village, and the image on the right is Vinyl Square. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but the first bullet is copy and pasted language from the Secretary of Interior's definition of what their standards are. This program is not a modernization program. It's not a Disneyfication program. It is truly intended to restore, rehabilitate the historical integrity of those buildings located in those two historic resource areas. The program articulates a very comprehensive application process. It will start with pre-application meetings. The intent of this process is to make sure that an interested party fully understands what the program is about, what the requirements are, what the expectations will be. Are also articulated in here that there are several legal documents that would be required to be signed, the grant agreement, as well as the preservation agreement. There are several checks and balances in here related to once a project is approved, where there would be inspections at 50% and 100% to ensure compliance with the approvals granted. This slide provides a table of contents for the 54-page detailed program manual. This manual has been reviewed and approved by the Chelmsford Preservation Commission, the Chelmsford Historical Commission, as well as the Chelmsford Historic District Commission. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Belansky. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
A majority of the Finance Committee recommends approval of Article 19 with a vote of 4 to 3.
And does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of Article 19.
Now is an opportunity for questions or discussion.
This is discussion. Kathy Duffett, Precinct 7. I'm opposed to this on numerous bases. First of all, the key word here is the money is going to be spent on commercial properties. It's interesting that the speaker compared it to the Center of the Arts, which is a public building which every citizen benefits from, and also the North Town Hall, which is another beautiful building that the entire citizenship benefits from. What this basically will allow commercial business owners who are earning money on their property to enhance their property. Now, it has possibly some benefit to the everyday citizen in Chelmsford, but not everybody in Chelmsford is going to be able to enjoy it, like going to the park or whatever. And the money for the preservation funds is percentage of people's taxes. Every citizen goes to this. And I do not feel that money from citizens' taxes for preservation, historic, conservation land should be used so that a business owner can increase their profit and have their building enhanced for themselves. I feel that it is not an appropriate use of the funds and does not benefit the taxpayers as a whole in Chelmsford, and I would highly recommend that other people vote against this article as well.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Bowman, Precinct 4. Start the clock, please. So this facade program, what it achieves is homogenization. It'll look like, the town will look like a mall or a strip mall, and takes out the village of Center Village. The thing about New England is that there is a variety of structures. Those structures should be preserved in the best way possible and not homogenized like a mall. Also, it appears that one state that is doing this quite greatly is North Carolina. This is not indicative of New England. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Deb Taverna from the Historic District and also the Historical Commission. We have been looking at this program for a couple of years. We feel this is a tool in the toolbox to help revitalize the centers. It's something the town has been working on for a while. We're not trying to homogenize our centers. We're trying to bring back some historical value to the buildings. We're not looking for everything to be the same. We're looking at old photographs and trying to recreate what was there in the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Latina, Precinct 4. If you look up facade programs, we're kind of lifting Raleigh, North Carolina, Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine. They're all doing something similar, but the chief difference is they're either doing loan programs for this or they're doing a grant where you have a matching grant, so the business comes to you and shares in this. And I have to agree, I've been all over the country, and all the main streets have done this. Salinas, California, Princeton, New Jersey, except Princeton put all those blinking yellow flashing lights, so you almost get blinded going through it. Hayward, California, they're all doing exactly this. And when you drive through those communities, you don't know where in the country you are. And it's really a shame. I think we should encourage our businesses to renovate and maybe put up some new signage. But if you do it with the control of the town, you're going to look like all these other communities, and you're going to neutralize and take away the thing that is Chelmsford. A suggestion I have is maybe we shouldn't tax them quite so much, and maybe we should fix the sidewalks that are in front of our town there. Other possibility, take the big bumps out of the driveway there and make it uncomfortable for all the people in Nashua to drive through our town so we can actually walk through there. These are the kinds of things that we should do before we start spending taxpayer money under the guise of historic preservation to the tune of $100,000. I'm voting no.
Thank you.
Nancy Arroway, Precinct 1. I heard the concern that's been stated by some of our previous speakers here about creating common facades and this being a facade program like some other states are running. But what I'm seeing in this article is not the creation of common facades, but the restoration of the original facades, and a 10-year preservation agreement from the recipients of these grants to maintain those facades. So we're creating an incentive program in our town centers to take it back to what it originally looked like. And I'm voting yes.
Thank you.
Ken LaFave, Precinct 6. So just want to clarify a couple issues here that the previous speakers had mentioned. Last few years, these programs have been being discussed both at the Center Village Historic District, Historic Commission meetings, and then the Vinyl Square Action Plan, or the Vinyl Square Committee up in North Chelmsford. And there is a match on here. So to the speakers, so there wasn't a match, there is a match that's required on the business owner. This is not homogenized frontage. There are going to be reviews done by the Vinyl Square Committee and the Historic Commission on each frontage that's going to be done that will have to go to them for review. These committees have been doing a lot of research to look at what the old buildings look like. They've been going through the archives and trying to find pictures of these old buildings so that we have an idea what they look like and try to encourage them. And again, there is, as Nancy had said, a 10-year preservation restriction on the properties to make sure they keep the facade maintenance up. I will say I go to dinner a lot. I eat out a lot. I eat at least once every 2 weeks in North Chelmsford, once every 2 weeks in the center of Chelmsford. But I also go to other towns like Groton, Concord, Lexington, Burlington, because I like to walk around a nice-looking downtown area that has a pleasant, feel to it. Before dinner, after dinner, we usually walk the centers. I don't do that in Chelmsford. I mean, when you walk around Chelmsford, there aren't other shops to really visit. You can go to a restaurant, but everything else is closed. I think we need to invest in our centers in order to facilitate that feeling that we all want, the pride of a downtown area. So I would encourage you to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kit Harbison, Precinct 7. John, I just have a question.
Sure.
I may have missed it, but who's going to administer the grant program?
So my department will assist in administering the program on behalf of the design review committees. So I will be responsible for working with those committees to hold public input sessions. Once applications are submitted, those would be processed through my office. I will assist those design review committees on the administrative side of things. But it is the two design review committees that will be entirely responsible for engaging with the proponent. Once the design review committee grants their approval, I will then do a post-approval grant administration.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Eric Salerno, Precinct 3. Quick question for the speaker through the moderator. I'd like to reiterate and double check that businesses aren't limited to their $3,000 investment as a match of the project. So if they're receiving $10,000, if they're awarded a $10,000 grant, there's no limit with regards to how much more they want to put in towards a project?
That's correct. They can exceed $10,000 if they want to.
Okay. Can start debate. I wanted to point out that at a 10-year commitment, I mean, you might have mentioned it in your presentation. However, the 10-year preservation agreement that's listed on one of the slides, it basically comes out to a continued investment that's being requested of the business owners. That also comes out to approximately only $1,000 a year that's granted to the businesses that are awarded the grant. When I do the math, that seems like a very cost-effective way to introduce revitalization into our business districts, compared to, let's just say, a TIF that might be offered to a large employer or organization, or some of the other suggestions that were made with regards to tax incentives. It seems like a great opportunity to bring businesses together that might have difficulty coordinating their efforts to update their facades, not for lack thereof their interest in making those types of improvements. This offers a conduit for design cooperation among the business owners to revitalize their facades, bringing together their timelines that could be affected by budgets that are now essentially brought together so that they can produce or focus on their efforts at the same time to make a bigger impact. I don't know if it would be possible to suggest or answer another question during debate or after I finish, but rather, how does this budget compare to the tax revenue that's generated by these two districts? I would surmise that this represents an exceptionally small percentage compared to the revenues that are generated by those districts, yet could offer a very large return. Thanks.
Thank you.
George Zaharoulis, Precinct 3. I'm voting in favor of this article. Small businesses are struggling to make a profit. They have to work hard, long hours. They keep getting hit with stormwater, the new taxes with the Health and Family Leave Act. They keep getting hit with another thing. This is a small thing to help incentivize them to spruce up their business, to try to draw more people in, and hopefully do make a very substantial profit. And as far as restaurants go, we have the more successful a restaurant does, we collect 0.75% on the meals tax that comes directly back to the town. So there are benefits to having successful businesses, as well as not having empty storefronts. And I think this program will help attract business and keep businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elaine McDonald, Precinct 1. Did the presentation cover at all sidewalks?
Sidewalks are not an eligible activity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? There being none, we will vote on Article 19, which is to appropriate $100,000 from Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for the creation of a facade improvement program for buildings located in the town center and/or Vinyl Square. Article passes 92 in favor, 48 opposed, 3 abstentions. Article 21.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 20 is the last financial article for the town meeting's consideration, and this has to do with the Sewer Enterprise Fund. You may recall the Sewer Enterprise operation in the town is a separately contained fund where all revenue from sewer operations stay with the sewer expenditures and operations. And therefore the fund closes out to a balance at the end of the year. We're seeking an appropriation of $565,500 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund free cash balance to the following uses: for the Lord Road Sewer Pump Station building, for a building and generator replacement, $220,000. Vincent Road Sewer Pump Station for a building and generator replacement, $200,000. The Weed Street Sewer Pump Station, We're doing a control panel and generator replacement for $120,500. And Milan Avenue Sewer Pump Station, we're seeking to do the engineering and design for an upgrade of $25,000. As noted earlier and as printed in the Finance Committee book, the Sewer Enterprise Fund has a balance of $1.9 million. We're at the point now where we have to go back and preserve the townwide sewer system. So we're going back to systems that were installed in the late 80s, early 90s, and bringing them to current operational status because as much like a water system, with the sewer system, you really don't want to notice it at all. You just want to make sure it works, and it works particularly in an emergency situation when there's power outage and so forth, similar to what we had this past week. So the Lord Road Sewer Pump Station was constructed in '93. The Vincent Road Pump Station was also constructed in '93. Weed Street, the control panel and generator was installed in '88. And the Milan Avenue station that we're doing the design for was constructed in '95. Here are some photos of what was the then at the time status of design and implementation work. You got your generator building, your control panels, and then you have your equipment sort of in the manhole covers that you can see there. Again, here's one another one of those situations out there. The first one was Lord Road. This is Vincent Road. And the reason the cost is different on Weed Street, there's a brick building there, so that building will remain intact, so therefore that reduces the cost for the Weed Street location. This is the Milan Avenue site. That is an area that is down and depressed and a bit wet, so what we really want to do is we're going to have to do a total reconstruct over there, so therefore we're seeking the $25,000 appropriation to do the design work and then come forth at a future town meeting to do the replacement. And then this is sort of a finished product of what you see for a sewer pump station built in the 21st century. This was recently done on Weston Avenue. You can see the big difference is everything is above ground. Everything is housed, so you don't see anything outside anymore. It preserves the equipment longer, more secure, so you have the ventilation for the buildings, and then obviously you have the sewer access adjacent to the buildings. That concludes the presentation, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Board of Finance Committee have a recommendation.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 20.
And does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of Article 20.
Any discussion or questions?
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Ed Buckley, Precinct 6. These are more than just strictly pump upgrades on some of these stations, correct?
That's
doing
cool.
Generators.
It's the replacement of what's out there now. What we've designed, like we have a town capital plan, we have a multi-year sewer construction capitalization plan as well. So basically, we're going to equipment that's at the end of its useful life, and then replacing them with modern, design and construction for these type of facilities.
What's the average lifespan for the pumps in general, and do they vary from station to station?
Yeah, yes, they do. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Discussion? There being none, we're going to vote on Article 20 to appropriate $565 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund free cash for sewer capital projects. The article passes 134 in favor, 2 opposed, 0 abstentions. Article 21.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 21 is a request to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the General Court to amend the town charter to change the name of the Board of Selectmen to Select Board, to exhibit gender neutrality, as do all other boards in the town of Chelmsford. The language of this motion is printed on pages 33 to 36 in the Town of Chelmsford Finance Committee report for this evening's meeting. basically what it is you go through the charter line by line, section by section, and replacing all references where it says Board of Selectmen or Selectmen with Select Board. As I mentioned in my introductory remarks, it is the only gender-specific board in the town's existence today. So what this would do is this would petition the legislature by town meeting through the Board of Selectmen to change the name of the Board of Selectmen to Select Board. We're not the first one to come to this change. We've seen now in the last several years, and you've probably read about it in news accounts, all cities in the Commonwealth that had gender-specific names for their executive boards, such as aldermen, have replaced all that with counselor and such. And we've seen a number of towns who have replaced the Board of Selectmen with Select Board. And again, this recognizes the fact that that this is the 21st century as we're approaching 2020. We obviously have had women on the Board of Selectmen for quite some time. We're now in a case where we actually have a majority of the Board of Selectmen that women serve in this capacity. So on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I would ask your approval of this article to authorize the board to submit this request to the state legislature. If this is approved, we would then come back at a future town meeting to amend the town's general bylaws to also remove references to change it from Board of Selectmen to Select Board. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
A majority of the Finance Committee recommends approval of Article 21 with a vote of 4-3.
Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
The Board of Selectmen recommends approval by a vote of 4-1.
Any discussion or questions?
Hello, I'm Susan Julian Gates. I'm a Precinct 7 rep, and I was the second woman in the history of Chelmsford to be elected to what was called the Board of Selectmen. And I'm very proud that I sat on that board. And I would like to remind people that next year is the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. And so I'm sincerely hoping and asking everyone here to vote in favor of this. We're in the 21st century, right, in 2020, and we deserve to be recognized. Women deserve to be recognized. So, thank you very much, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you.
This is also a discussion. Ruth Monahan.
Yes.
Ruth Monahan, Precinct 3, West Chelmsford. If you go ahead and look in the dictionary, you will find the first definition of man is a human being, a person. Only then do we say, particularly, a male adult of the human species, the human race, mankind. We're kind of making much ado about nothing. Man, neither a fit night out for neither man nor beast. Do you think I never thought that man meant me? Man means a human being. We're making a lot of fuss about being, the gender specific. Well, if we're going to go by gender specific, since man means human being, a person, mankind, then that also takes care of our LBQT. I missed something. T? LBQ, anyway. It would include absolutely anybody who identifies as a human being. So I understand that a lot of people get to the point that they think gender only, male, female, male, female, but male also historically, throughout literature, throughout history, throughout everything. Man often means human being. It is context dependent. So we can go ahead and change it, but I think it's a lot of work over something that is silly. Thank you.
Glenn Thorne, Precinct 5. This is a really difficult discussion for me because I can clearly see the reason for the change, but I also want to share with you some conversations I've had and research I've done on this that might want to have us keep the Board of Selectmen as the term for our lead board in the town. We have spoken many times tonight about the history of the town, about keeping our heritage, about keeping the appearance of our buildings so that they look like the historical landmarks in the town. Every meeting we talk about maintaining the history of our town. The term Board of Selectmen goes back hundreds of years. It's typically New England, and it is a Chelmsford term for the lead board in the town. And so there's a lot of history associated with that particular term. While 70 or more towns have changed to select board, where you have to call the person in the seat a select board member as opposed to selectman, and a lot of towns have decided not to do it in order to maintain the connection with their history and the documents that go back hundreds of years. We had a charter review recently, and members of the Board of Selectmen came to the charter review meeting. Members of the town came to the charter review meeting. Charter review members were there, and not once was it brought up that we are improperly naming the board in our town. So, we do this every 10 years. It might be worth a much longer discussion than we're having here tonight, but it is an important part. An argument that's made by many towns, because they looked at their own history, was that we need to have select board instead of select men because women won't run for selectmen offices in their town. It's like, we're rejecting women because we're calling them select men. For some reason, I feel Chelmsford doesn't have that problem. If we look at our Board of Selectmen right now, we have 3 women on the board, and I think that's fantastic. So that's something that hasn't affected our town in that regard. The last piece of information I wanted to share with you is other towns have looked at removing the word man totally from the operations of the town. That's a discussion that goes over and over again. Somebody actually proposed that they change the name from the Lexington Minutemen to the Lexington Minute People, and then change that in their documents. I thought that was silly. It didn't pass, but it was suggested. And other towns have actually changed the name of, somebody spoke about it earlier, manhole covers to maintenance portals because the word man was in manhole cover. That didn't make any sense to me either. So Board of Selectmen has a historical connection to our town that I think is very, very important, and I believe that our town has always been welcoming for women running for office. So being a new movement in the 20th century to remove the word man from our town operations, our town documents, and other parts of our town, I think is unnecessary for this particular term on the board. I don't have strong feelings against the change, but I think I have strong feelings about maintaining some connection to our history. Oh, by the way, who's going to propose from the board or any board here to change our town motto? Anybody? You know what the town motto is, but we have to take man out of the town documents, but it's in our town motto. Just consider that when you vote, as we start changing the nature of how we name things in our town to separate ourselves from the history that we have so wonderfully established.
Thank you.
Hi, Elaine McDonald, Precinct 1, and going with history, we are Chelmsford, which is named after an English town. I'm suggesting that we dump this whole select thing, which when I first moved here thought was a little weird term. It took me a while to figure out what it was. I think we should go to council. There would be a council, and people would be council members. Boom, done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Buckley, Precinct 6. I think this is rather silly and much ado about nothing. And if we're going to get gender specific, Paul, town manager, you should take that away. And maybe it should be town director. And this is, how far do we go with this? I think it's silly.
Claire Janot, Precinct 7. I just got to take a heavy sigh on this. This is discussion. I was one of 2 women elected to the board in 2010. It was the first time in quite a while that women rejoined the board or joined the board. And the other woman elected that year currently continues to serve and had asked me when we were elected, should we bring this up? I'd like everybody to think about this in a few ways. My response at the time was, no, I want us to be taken seriously. And I'm afraid that it would damage how we were looked at if we made this an issue. And we did hard work as members of a board. We have a planning board, we have a school committee, we have a board of appeals. We don't have men in any of our other titles. It does matter. To people who think it doesn't matter, I would ask you to please say, well, if you don't think it matters, vote yes on this. Because it's not about the history. The credibility of the work that the women in the past and in the future do on this board is based on what they do, not what you call them. But I do think it makes a difference to how you show your respect for them if you call them select board members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I standing closer to this? Okay. I'm Patrick Snow, Precinct 9. Yeah, I'd like to echo the previous statements. I mean, I agree that it's much ado about nothing and that I think it's really no big deal. I don't know why not to select the change. I feel like I wouldn't characterize it as making a big fuss over, saying that, I mean, I think, yeah, everybody here is like, it seems like everybody on each side is basically saying, yes, women have equal opportunity in political office in Chelmsford. And so I just think that this is just a pretty casual, no-brainer change to me. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Jim Gurley, Precinct 7. We have town firefighters. We don't have town firemen anymore. We have police officers. We don't have policemen anymore. I think we should recognize that we have females on our board, and let's jump into the 20th century and call that select board.
Thank you.
Joe Reddy, Precinct 1. I'd like to move the question.
We have a motion to move the question. So, however, there is no one behind them, so if nobody else is going to get up, why don't we just vote on the article, so we don't have to have an extra vote. We will vote on Article 21 to change the designation from Board of Selectmen to Select Board. No surprise there. The article passes, 116 in favor, 18 opposed, 4 abstentions. I believe we have a motion.
Hi, Scott Davidson, Precinct 3. I'd like to make a motion that we take Article 24 before Article 22.
And
can I speak to that?
Sure.
So in Article 22, we're debating whether to change certain parcels along Route 40 to the IA zoning. And in Article 24, we're changing the definition of what exactly IA zoning is. So I think it would be prudent for us to consider what IA zoning is before we decide whether to change certain parts of land to that IA zoning. So in Article 24, so I'm not going to debate the merits of any of the articles yet. I'm just saying that I think it would be prudent for us to talk about Article 24, which has to do with changing the IA zoning to multifamily. I think a lot of people here may, in fact, have their opinions of Article 22 be influenced by whether or not Article 24 passes.
Okay, thank you.
Colleen Stansfield, Precinct 1. I just want to make a point of order. This is not changing IA zoning. This is talking about COID, which happens to be an overlay.
Okay, you're the proponent. Why don't you explain why you believe it changes these?
So can you bring the text up on Article 24? So it says residential use is to delete the prohibition of multifamily within IA zoning districts. So unless someone can explain to me how that doesn't change the definition of IA zoning, I guess I don't understand. Right. Can we get an opinion from town council as to exactly what that's doing?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speaker. The CEIOD is an overlay district, and there is currently a provision within that district that doesn't allow residential within IA zoning districts. So this particular article would actually eliminate that restriction for residential. So it's not going to change what constitutes an IA zoning district. What it will do is, as part of that zoning overlay district, change what's allowed within the IA district.
So I will ask you if you wish to proceed with your motion or whether you wish to withdraw it.
So
I'm not telling you what to do.
Yeah,
Just do it.
I'm looking for a little bit more clarification from town council. Will Article 24 impact what will happen in along Route 40?
So again, without going through what the Route 40 zoning is, the Article 24 would lift a prohibition within the overlay district, the CEOID, that prohibits residential within the IA zoning districts. So any area that is currently IA that is within the CEOID, you're not allowed to do residential, whereas if this passes, you could put residential within there. It is not going to make any other area that is not currently industrial become industrial.
Right, but I think are we proposing it? Yeah. Can you pull up the map then, please, that explains exactly, I think it says the gray areas within the packet there. So I'm going to pull a little Denzel Washington line from the movie Philadelphia. Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Will Article 24 passing impact what will happen along Route 40 if Article 22 passes? Yes.
Correct.
So in that case, then I'm still going to keep the motion that we take Article 24 before Article 22.
Okay. We have a pending motion. We will have discussion on the motion.
Based on that last answer, I support the pending motion of taking 24 out of order.
Okay. Thank you.
I also support it. I sat on FinCom, and I had one-on-one, and I got confused with
Yeah.
this motion.
Please identify yourself,
Sorry.
Ms. Tanini.
Anita Tanini, Precinct 4, and I also support this. Found it very confusing.
Ken LaFave, Precinct 6. So for the Board of Selectmen, we actually had delayed voting on Article 23 and 27. What George Dixon had asked us to. He is home with the flu and didn't come tonight for our pre-meeting, so we didn't vote on these yet to give our recommendations. So we were actually kind of hoping we could maybe move all the zoning to Thursday night and just tackle the last 3 tonight.
Okay, well. So you're making a motion to actually table the. Pardon? No, I'm trying to understand what he's saying. Okay, so what you're saying is you want to table all 3 of the articles. That's what you want to propose a motion, but there already is a motion on the floor.
And that has to be acted on first.
And that does have to be acted on first. So at some point.
Or withdrawn.
Pardon?
Or it could be withdrawn.
Right. If you wish to withdraw your motion in favor of their motion and then renew the motion, you can do that too. Okay, it's fine with me. I got no dog in this fight, so go ahead.
Just a quick question, Dave Hadley, Precinct 3. Is the amendment to the Article 24 going to pertain to existing structures, or is that going to be something for future construction? I don't know if that's the right time to ask this.
Okay, but you have to identify yourself.
Dave Hadley, Precinct 3.
Thank you. Well, you can ask, I guess he's asking you, I'm not sure.
I'm not clear on what the question is.
I'm just looking to see if
Are you
this is
asking about the article itself, or are you asking about the
amendment to Article
take
24, is that going to have an effect on existing structures as a reparation for past multifamily structures, or is that something that's going to happen that's going to be forward-moving for new structures? I don't know if I should be asking this now or when the other article comes up.
So Article 24 is not being proposed to be amended currently. It's being proposed to be taken out of order.
Right, I think he wants you to explain the article, though.
I think I'm a little confused as to if we amend this, is it going to allow for multifamily?
Okay, well, hold on. I think you're confusing everyone. We're not amending Article 24. We want to take it ahead of 22.
Correct.
So it's not amending. Is your question if we move it before Article 22 and 23?
Right. Might not be the right time to ask this, but I'm just trying to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's asking if we move this ahead of 22 and 23, will it impact non-conforming structures?
Right.
So taking it out of order isn't going to have any impact on any...
Right. No, I'm just trying to understand what the amendment's going to be, that's all. So we'll get to that after.
Okay.
So you mean, you're asking what the article is going to be rather than the amendment?
No, I understand what we're doing with the proposed change right now.
Okay, Mr. Hadley, I think you're confusing everyone, especially me, when you use the term amendment, because there is no amendment. All they're asking to do is to move one article ahead of two others.
I understand that.
Okay, so it's
right.
Just call it a motion to move.
I'll be back with the question after.
Okay.
There will be an explanation of this article.
Okay.
Susan Dandera, Precinct 9. Article 24 references the industrial areas. Is that only industrial IA zones in the community enhancement investment overlay districts?
Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, yes. This particular article addresses a current prohibition in the zoning bylaw for the COID that prohibits residential uses within that overlay district. And this proposal is to actually eliminate that particular prohibition.
So Article 24 only affects IAs in that CEIOD?
Correct.
Okay. On Article 22, the Route 40 area, is that a CEIOD?
I think that's what the proposal is, correct?
Right, but she's trying to find out if this area would be covered. It does say CCCOD, but I don't know.
Excuse me, sorry, my phone decided to start talking to me. I'm looking through. It says CCOD. Yes, thank you, Evan. It would be helpful if we actually had the presentation of these articles.
If they ask to get applicability for that, then they can be applicant.
Okay, I'm getting consulting at the mic here. Route 40 could become a CEIOD.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. So if everyone, unless there's more discussion, and there is.
Hi, Colleen Stansfield again, Precinct 1. So the CEIOD, you have to come to the planning board first and ask for applicability. That's how you get to use it. So it doesn't automatically go that way. Does that clear it up? No.
Okay. So we do have a motion on the floor to advance Article 24 ahead of Article 22 and 23. So we will now, unless there's more discussion, we will vote on that motion. Okay? So all in favor of moving Article 24 ahead of 22 and 23, please vote. An affirmative vote will be to move it, and a negative vote will be to keep it where it is.
So do you want, I'm going to do that.
Now it's going to make the presentation
Oh, I want it.
a little awkward. Well, they're going to have to really present what they're doing for 22 and 23 as part of 24 now.
Well, they may.
Cannot switch it to another night. You can only change the order.
They may want to present them all at once.
The motion to move passes 124 in favor, 11 opposed, 3 abstentions. So now we're going to hear the presentation on Article 24, which may involve explaining a little bit about 22 and 23. I'm not sure.
I have another motion.
You have a motion?
Yeah, a motion to table Articles 22 through 29.
Okay. We have to vote on that.
And just to explain why, given that they're all zoning articles and they're all interconnected, and given the hour right now, I think we should take all of those zoning articles together while it's fresh, and that way we can handle the rest of the warrant tonight, or as much of the warrant as we can tonight.
So Articles 24, 23, 2, 23, and up to 29 through 29, you want to table until the Thursday session. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
But in the order that we just established.
No,
24.
I've got it. I've
Great.
got it. Thank you.
you.
I'm not as dumb as I look. Thank you. So, is there any discussion on the motion to table effectively Articles 22 through 29, but 24 will come ahead of 22 and 23? Yes.
Brian Latina, Precinct 4. Mr. Moderator, to you, to Town Council, can this body table the motion to a night certain?
It can table it to the next night, the next session of the town meeting, certainly.
I thought we could not move articles to other nights or back. So tabling the motion would allow us to take it up on Thursday night or whenever the town meeting might meet again?
Yes, it would.
Right. My expectation, Mr. Latina, is that we will go as far as we can go in the next 40 minutes on 30 through the end, and then whatever's left, we go back to 24 when we start on Thursday.
Understood, but tabling the motion stops the motion the 3 that we're talking about for how long?
Until Thursday. He made it very specific.
Current session. I know, but I don't think you can. That's my question.
So, Mr. Moderator, I think the appropriate thing to do would be to table them until we complete the other articles, and then when you've completed those other articles, move to continue to the next session.
Well, we can do that too. Okay, so what we're going to do is...
Do you want the motion to change to take Article 30, 31, and 32 out of order, and then before we take the other articles?
The person who made the motion.
And that would solve it, because we won't get
Okay,
to
but we
11
have
o'clock.
a motion on the floor right now, and unless the proponent seeks to amend his motion, what we're going to do is, when we come back, we're going to go as far as we can go, assuming we go anywhere for the next 40 minutes, and then we're going to, complete the rest of the
motion to lay on the table is not debatable.
Right. But what we're going to do is, after we get done with the motion, when we get done with Article 32, which I think is the final article, we will then go back to 24, 22, 23, and 20 through 29. Okay? Okay.
Karen Utek, Precinct 5.
I just
No, it's not a debatable motion.
We just debated,
No, we were just getting clarification of what was going to happen. There was a point of order, it wasn't debate.
we can't have any discussion about moving
It
the...
is not a debatable motion. Either you vote it up or you vote it down. So what we're voting on is to move Articles 22 through 29 at the end of town meeting, which hopefully will be Thursday, but don't count on it. And then when we get done with the regular order of warrant articles, then we're going to go 24, 22, 23 through 29. And you have a problem?
Not at the end of a session, the town meeting. It's the end of the town meeting. Right.
Okay.
Can I ask a point of order?
You can.
By doing things out of order, is there a chance that people that might want to be present for those 30, 31, those after articles that would now become earlier may not be present tonight because they were planning to be here Thursday night?
Well, I don't know how much farther we're going to get, but yes, that possibility exists. So now you as a board will vote, and perhaps the better way to characterize it is a motion to table?
That's how it's been characterized.
Okay. Postpone. So what I'm going to do is if you don't have any problem, just for clarification, it'll be a motion to postpone it until the next session.
Motion to postpone is debatable.
I'm okay with that.
Which is debatable. Do you want that? Okay. So now you can debate.
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion to adjourn till Thursday night.
Okay. Well, first of all, there is already a motion on the floor before your motion. So there is the motion to postpone.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. Look, folks, you know, this is your town meeting. This is not my town meeting. But we've got over 35 minutes in which we can get stuff done. And unless you want to come back here possibly on Halloween, I say that we get as much done today as we can, but it's your vote. So you can decide. If you withdraw that motion, then the only motion is the motion to adjourn, and your motion is now off the table, literally and figuratively.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I won't withdraw it then.
Okay.
I'll leave it up.
So right now you're going to vote on a motion to postpone those articles until the next session. Okay? And
it's a motion to postpone until after you've completed the rest of the article.
And what that means is we're going to complete everything else and then go back to 24, 22, 23, etc. Yes, that's what it's going to be.
Motion to adjourn at that point.
Okay.
John.
So
at that point they can make a motion to adjourn.
Right. Right.
Well, I think once they get to the zoning, that we do want them.
Right. So, do we have a screen here? Let's vote. Once the screen is up. Here we go.
I'll have donuts on Thursday. Thanks.
So Thursday.
Paul Regazio, Precinct. What are we voting on, please?
You're voting on postponing Articles 22 through 29, which will be heard after we get done with the rest of the warrant articles.
Thank you.
Which has passed 119 in favor, 15 opposed. So now we're going to go straight to Article 30.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 30 is a real estate tax exemption for parents, guardians of deceased active service members. This article and the next article are a local adoption of state statutes. And so it basically means the state passes a law and it's up to the individual community to accept that law in its entirety without amendment. So with that as introduction, we're going to turn the podium over to Regina Jackson, our veterans agent, who brings forth this article for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Sorry, excuse me. This article is for the adoption of Clause 22H. Right now, the veterans' property tax exemptions from the Department of Revenue in Massachusetts covers Clause 22, which is a $400 exemption for veterans with service-connected disabilities of 10% or more. And it flows on. We have Clause 22A. This is a $750 exemption for veterans who suffered a line of duty loss or permanent loss of 1 foot, 1 hand, etc. And it goes down. 22B is a $1,250 tax exemption for veterans who suffered in the line of duty loss or permanent use of 1 foot, both hands, etc. And then 22C, which is veterans with a total disability and receiving specially adapted housing. Clause 22D is a full exemption for surviving spouses. This is for spouses of veterans who are KIA or whose death was a proximate cause of their service-connected disability. 22E, which is, all these are already on the books. 22E is veterans with 100% service-connected disabilities get $1,000 tax exemption. 22F is a full exemption for veterans who are paraplegics. So what we're asking tonight is for adoption of 22H, which is a full exemption for surviving parents or Gold Star parents. And this came about with the BRAVE Act of 2018. So,
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 30 with 1 abstention.
Board of Selectmen have a recommendation.
Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval for Article 30.
Time for discussion or questions?
Ruth Monahan, Precinct 3. I just have a question, and that is, through you, Mr. Moderator, to the Speaker, and that is it an either-or, that either the spouse would get it or the guardian parents?
No.
Or would it be both?
Both. If they were both otherwise eligible, yes.
Sherman Horton, Precinct 6. I want to clarify what I think this is saying, and that is that a couple or the beneficiary of this would have to have resided in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for 5 years and not in the town. And I think my question in that regard is, if someone moves to the town for the intent of being able to take this exemption, will that make us a magnet in that regard?
You're right. It has to be within the Commonwealth. So I do not see that happening at all, because most communities in Massachusetts are in the process of adopting it. This is it's fairly new right now. So some of the communities that I know have already adopted it are Hingham, Revere, Foxborough, Lawrence, Lynn, Medford, Boxborough, Arlington, Lexington, and many, many more are in the process of adopting it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sam Polton, Precinct 8. Lest we misunderstand the intent of this article, this is to do something precious little for people that have done something enormous for us. They've sacrificed a family member who put himself or herself in harm's way to protect us from those who would harm us. They lost their lives doing this. As far as I'm concerned, if this somehow attracts people to Chelmsford to take advantage of a tax break, having lost a spouse or a child, well, welcome to Chelmsford. I urge us to vote for this unanimously as a thank you to those who've given so much to us. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else? Okay. So we're going to vote on Article 30, which is to allow real estate tax exemption for parents or guardians of deceased active service members. Which doesn't affect the unanimous vote. Sam Chase. Oh, 8 abstentions. It is technically unanimous. The vote is 128 in favor, no opposition, and 8 abstentions. Article 31.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 31 is another local adoption of a state statute, and this falls under dog licensing. And as basically, if the town were to vote to accept this provision of state law, we would waive the fee for a license for a dog that is owned by a person age 70 or older. There are approximately 4,300 licensed dogs in the community. According to the town clerk's office, 371 of those dogs are owned by persons age 70 or older. The estimated reduction in license fees is about $6,000. What this is not doing is eliminating the requirement that a person age 70 or older license a dog, but what it basically would do is it would waive the license fee for those such people. And so again, this is similar to the previous article, this is a local adoption statute. We have seen so far other communities adopt this, such as Acton and Westford, and the town clerk brought this to my attention, and we bring it to your consideration to see if this is another means of which you wish to assist those elders in the community in addressing some of their costs of remaining in the community. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation on Article 31?
A majority of the Finance Committee recommends approval of Article 31 with a vote of 4 to 3.
And the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation regarding Article 31.
The Board of Selectmen voted unanimously to recommend approval of Article 31.
Time for questions or discussion? You don't have to rush.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Ginger Skoog, Precinct 6. Through you to the Speaker, can I ask a clarification?
Sure.
Does this still require those owners to license their dog?
Yes.
Awesome. And if they don't license them, they are still subject to the penalties of not licensing?
Yes, late fees and so forth, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. No one else? No discussion? Okay. So we're going to vote on Article 31, which will waive dog license fees for dogs owned by persons 70 years or older.
Too many people want to talk about classification. Doesn't matter. People want to hear.
The article passes 109 in favor, 19 opposed, 4 abstentions. Mr.
Brian
Latina.
Latina, Precinct 4. Mr. Moderator, I'd like to adjourn to Thursday at 7:30. keeping in mind that there are members of the public that are not here this evening that expected the last article to be something they'd like to discuss. So in deference to them, I'd like to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Can we put that up on the screen? And that will be till Thursday at 7:30. One second. Don't walk out before you vote yes. Okay, motion to adjourn. Take out your clickers and vote. The article passes 101 in favor, 24 opposed, 2 abstentions. See you Thursday.